Well, what is this episode? This is going to be episode 12.
Sounds right. Yeah, because Father Matthew is 10.
Seems right.
Double digits.
I think it is episode 12.
Okay.
Kathleen Lee Higgins.
Like the most Irish name that you can come up
Isn't
with.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. So we should be drinking beer right now.
Yeah.
But
What you got in that coffee?
you never know. Little
The
shaka.
Irish coffee?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
It's too
man.
strong for me.
Scott's wondering why he's falling asleep in all these episodes.
Yeah.
Because it's a reverse coffee.
Semi-conscious.
We used to have, my grandfather used to have a big St. Patrick's Day party, and I never knew what, like, they were all drinking Irish coffees, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what it was till I got older, and I was like, oh.
So
All
we'll
right.
have to get to your heritage after
Okay.
we'll do this prayer. So what we do is we'll ask you to lead us in prayer,
Okay.
and then I'm trying to implement scripture into everything
Okay, yeah.
that we do. So we'll do today's gospel.
Okay.
I'll read it, and then we'll implement it or not. But I think
Yeah.
it was actually a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah, we read it this morning, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. So
Because sometimes you read the gospel, and you're like, that was a good one. Next, yeah, this one, I was like, well, all right.
yeah,
Get some
for
meat on
today.
those bones.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. If you don't mind, lead us in prayer,
Sure. Yeah,
and we'll
pray.
get rolling.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to be together, to come together as workers in your vineyard. And we ask that you open our hearts and our minds to what it is that you have in store for us today. In the little moments, in the little encounters with people. As we share our stories, as we share our time together, Lord, let us be vessels of you, witnesses to what you've done in our life. We ask Our Lady to take all the intentions of our hearts, those things that keep us from Jesus, the things that weigh us down, the people we have promised to pray for. We ask Our Lady to bring these things to the foot of the cross as we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Beautiful. Yeah. So I didn't even know that you had major in theology. I'm going to be learning today. I'm excited.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, shoot.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I have an undergrad in theology, and then I thought, why not? I love school. Not at all. I'll go get my master's. I have a master's as well.
Come on. Well, we'll learn about that.
Yeah.
Is Our Lady of Holy Cross?
Our Lady of Holy Cross is my undergrad. Yeah.
I remember because we were there
Yeah.
kind of for some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
And
New
then,
Orleans.
Then Petrie and Baglow.
Yeah, they were there for 1 year, and then they were like, bye.
Yeah.
You got that 1 year?
Yeah. It was a great year.
Yeah.
It was a great year, but yeah. Yeah.
Because I know Father Josh talked in his homily yesterday about getting some Petrie time. Like,
Oh, yeah, because then we lost him to the seminary. I mean,
Okay.
how do you argue with that? So
Is he back? I thought he was back.
he's always lived in Homa,
Okay.
Thibodeau.
and I didn't know that till
Thibodeau,
like
yeah.
2 years ago. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
dang.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, and he's in fact, weird story. When I went to the Augustine Institute, is where I got my master's from, and it was originally in
nice.
Colorado, and I was a year or so in, and they said, we've got a new professor. He's going to be your academic advisor, Dr. Brant Petrie, and I was like. I was like, I'm back. And but even then, he taught from most of their stuff is online. So he would go in for like a week or so, report
Film.
everything, and come back.
You got the real thing twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I never
Yeah,
took
I-
another course of his, but
Oh.
he was my academic advisor. Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped out of Holy Cross and just followed him to Notre Dame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like
Yeah.
transfer credits. We won't worry about that.
Yeah. Just go on.
Yeah.
It's all the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Haley, do you mind turn the air down a little bit? Or I guess I can go. Let me go get it.
Okay.
This is the first off scene.
We just keep this in the show, like
Yeah.
like Matt Frad pouring the coffee.
Yeah.
That'd be fine.
Just trying to be like, I'm like overtly being more authentic in our lackadaisical nature.
Yeah.
Should have brought my mic. Tripping. Okay, so Uh-oh.
We were getting very heated in our discussion of academics.
Mm.
So we are implementing scripture by way of the gospel of
Yep.
each
It's a
interview.
good way to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So luckily I can read now.
Take my hat off again.
And yeah, so today is Matthew 25:31 to 46. The judgment of nations. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit upon his glorious throne, and all the nations will be assembled before him. And he will separate them from one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. The king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. A stranger and you welcomed me. Naked and you clothed me. Ill and you cared for me. In prison and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you?" And the king will say to them in reply, "Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. A stranger, and you gave me no welcome. Naked, and you gave me no clothing. Ill and in prison, and you did not care for me." Then they will answer and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger or naked, or ill or in prison, and not minister to your needs?" He will answer them, "Amen, I say to you, what you did not do for one of these least ones, you did not do for me." And these will go off to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. So, yeah, awesomely kind of
Yeah.
relevant to your ministry.
Yeah.
And we can kind of tidbit back and
Yeah.
forth on that as we go.
Yeah.
And they become more
We were
apparent.
talking about it this morning, just about the idea of do you put on your Christianity and take it off? Like, when did we see you? When did I wasn't, doing homeless mission, work or homeless ministry or, going to the hospital. Like, where were you? And he's like, "Man, I'm everywhere." And the people who, it's like you keep your Catholic t-shirt on all the time. They live that life, and they're always looking for encounters with Jesus, even when they're not in a church or, for me at my office at the diocese. Like, it can be really hard sometimes working for the church to find or to be on the lookout for Jesus, because you're like, okay, I'm going into work. Now I will encounter Christ, and then I will go to him. And but when you're not, can you separate the job and your faith,
Especially the nature of the business,
Yeah.
like here too. And
Yeah.
So tell us what your job is.
Yeah, so I work for the diocese here in Baton Rouge. I'm the director of youth and young adult ministry for the diocese. So a lot of what we do is work with our youth ministers in our parishes, or people who work with young people, and it's kind of a gray area, because out of 64 parishes, we have probably 10 people who have youth minister in their job title, and many of them have several of their official job titles in their, it's like comma, 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 or we call them the slashers, right? So they're like youth minister / DRE / digital media / Sunday school, whatever, nursery, whatever. So it's a lot of DREs, a lot of volunteers, a lot of mamas who are just like, I just want my kid to have something to go to, somewhere to grow their faith. And so we work a lot with the ministers, and not so much with the young people. It used to be 10 years ago that this office was doing a lot of conferences, a lot of retreats.
There's like the Julie Ginter
Yeah,
Solano days.
Yeah. And my predecessor, Wes Giffen, had a really good insight and the benefit of COVID, right? That shut everything down and made everybody kind of refocus. And he said, why aren't we focusing more on ministering to the ministers? So he started that, and so now we've cultivated this group of ministers that are fed spiritually, socially, intellectually, and we're now at a point where it's like, okay, well, let's do some things, So we're having our middle school rally in a couple weeks, which is going to be insanity. But
middle schoolers.
yeah, a whole bunch of middle schoolers running. It's so funny because Bishop Duca is from 1 to 9 p.m.
Bishop's gonna be there.
Yeah, the bishop's gonna be there, and he said, Kathleen, you don't think 9 o'clock's a little late? And I was like, oh Lord. I said, Bishop, this is the pre-party for some of them. Some of them are gonna go have like slumber parties and So I'm really excited about it. But I feel like that's we're at a good place to do that. Where if the foundation isn't there and the kids aren't in their parishes, and there's not healthy ministry in their parish, who are we pulling into a diocesan event, and why would we have something that we can't send them back to,
I feel like
to
our
their
youth
home?
ministers are spread so thin.
Oh, yeah.
Has to do so much.
Yeah.
So you coordinate to the youth ministers?
Well, I don't. I just work with them. So like whatever they run their own ships, and they run them way better than I. It's so interesting to see the different ministries that are going on and the different people who are at the helms. What I do is I basically say, hey, these are the diocesan policies. Make sure that you have this, thing on your form that you have to fill out, and make sure all your people are background checked, and then I just get to really minister to them, see what they're doing, be a kind of a liaison between the bishop and them. Like, not this past October, but the October before, we had brunch with the bishop. It was so fun. I just was like, look, I'm gonna cater it. Y'all come on, we'll just sit with the bishop. I was like, nobody get cray. I said, but let's just be with him. Let him see,
He's a fun guy to hang out with.
Yeah. Oh, he's hilarious. Yeah. And so it was at that meeting where he said, like 10 minutes left, and he goes, listen, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear any feedback. I don't want to hear anything from anybody. But I want you to consider, I want you to think about, I want you to start thinking about what it would be like if we changed the confirmation age. And he was like, it was like, let us pray. And everybody was like, what? Somebody was like, well, actually, and he's like, And I was like, don't shoot, the bishop said, and that was when he dropped. Yeah, that was not this past October, but the October before. And so he was like, just start thinking about what
this
that
is
would
just
look
the
like.
Diocese decision, or is this bigger? Dang.
Yeah.
Bishop has almost pluripotent authority.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but he is a gatherer of information. So he wants to know like what everybody thinks, how it will affect people. Like, and that's why people are always like, why does the diocese just, and I'm like, look, if it takes as long as it takes you in your parish to get a decision made, times that by 100, and then times that by 100 if you want to get something from the Vatican. That's kind of how we work,
We always joke in our family because, well, Lord of the Rings nerds, so this may be too much, whatever. The Ints, right? When the Ints get together, it took them like a day just to introduce themselves.
Yeah.
Right? That's how the church is, right? We're
As it
purposefully.
should be.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
right.
Yeah.
Proper
Yeah.
discernment.
It's not easy. When we're ready to go to battle, they're still trying to figure out basic salutations.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many people that he's responsible for.
Yeah.
It's so easy for us to say, well, this one thing that I'm involved in, this is how it affects me. But 64 parishes, I mean, that alone, like there are some parishes I'm like, what? Like every once in a while I'll go through the list and I'm like, that it's like Narnia. I never seen that one before. You just came out of nowhere. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that was just us.
Yeah, well, a lot of dioceses are making similar decisions. So Lafayette made it probably about a year before we did. New Orleans has. I thought that they would. I thought they already had, but they have not. And I think or I was talking to a diocese in, or the me in Tulsa, and they just changed theirs to
The me
third
in
grade.
Tulsa?
Yeah,
Tulsa's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, to third grade. And I was like, what? Like,
So what
Bishop-
are we?
we're seventh grade.
Seventh
well,
grade.
It will be, that's the transition that we're making. So basically the bishop made that announcement in December, which, he was like, it's going to be seventh grade. And then people were like, well, how long do we have? What curriculum do we use? And he was like,
Work it out.
seventh grade, and then we as a diocese, we've been putting on some seminars and some things like that to walk the catechetical leaders through it, which has been so great, because I think there's the biggest, and I don't think it's a distrust of the diocese or the bishop at all. I think it's just a distrust that that's the only caveat, like seventh grade.
Well,
When? How? I don't know.
And we're
Just
so-
get there,
We're so used to holding confirmation out,
Right.
like
Yeah.
a carrot, right, to keep youth involved.
Yeah.
But I remember bringing my kids 4 Days for Life
Yeah.
and stuff, bring them to pray at the abortion clinic, and a couple of guys tell me, like, look, if they're not confirmed, you don't want them to cross that street
Yeah.
and go
Yeah.
beyond that sidewalk.
Yeah.
Like, there are spiritual protections to
Yeah.
receive a confirmation that you just don't have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's something
Ordinance.
to said about maturity in the spirit, maturity in the faith at a younger age. That
Right.
like maybe that needs to happen earlier in order to, when you are leaving high school, it kind of puts
Yeah.
purpose on us
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
now what are we doing junior
Right.
senior year differently than like just introducing them into being fully Catholic?
Right.
Like where are we digging deeper
Yeah.
before they are let off like to the real wolves in
Your
college?
head's
Right.
probably exploding with
Oh, yeah.
things to talk about. There's so many fascinating
Yeah.
topics here. Like
Yeah.
the Hispanic apostolate, they're so good at getting the whole family involved.
Yeah.
Right? We just try and like bump everything off to the youth
Yeah.
minister. Like you form my children.
Well, it's such a silo, like, right? So when we talk about this question, that's one of the buzzwords, like everything's a silo, and it's like, okay, yeah. Or I love my church. Obviously, I work for it. I've devoted way too much academic hours to it, in my humble opinion. But like, I love it. But we love buzzwords, right? So it's like we need discipleship, and it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, let's do
Okay, well let's do that. You know how to do a discipleship? I don't know how.
I got a
I don't know,
t-shirt.
but we need it, and it's like, and so we say it for like 20 years, and then so this is really, in a good way, I think, unearthed. We keep unearthing things that this is like, it's like an octopus, right? If all you ever see is like the bulbous head of the octopus,
Yeah,
right? You're
that's
like,
a
oh,
plant."
cool, yeah. But like, it's almost like, it was like, okay, now we're going to move confirmation. And we unearth that and we're like, oh no, there's like 10 more tentacles, and it's like, sometimes we're like, put the dirt back on, and just look,
pretend that's
just look,
not there
yeah,
right
just
now.
look at the little eyes. That's all, but it's family ministry. How do we recatechize and evangelize the family? What opportunities do we have to evangelize and catechize and disciple our high school kids? Like, how do we integrate them into the parish? I asked the bishop, we were talking about it, and I said, Bishop Duca, I said, are we prepared to have, post confirmation kids, 9th, 10th grade on your parish council? And he was like, whoa, and I was like, but I mean,
Yeah.
What, nursing home
Right,
ministry,
yeah.
all sorts of things they can
right.
get into.
And to an appropriate degree, right? But like, if we're empowering them, we can't just empower them and say, okay, wait over there until you're 18 years old.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when one of the things that I was frustrated the most with, I turned 18 like 2 months after I got confirmed, a summer before my senior year. But a lot of my friends got confirmed and then didn't turn 18 for months or a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately were like, well, I want to be an extraordinary minister. And the church was like, you got to be 18. And it was like,
Really?
what? Yeah, it was like that. Okay, that's bizarre. I don't think it's the case anymore. But how are we as adults, holding back our kids? You know, when we don't allow them to try to participate because we're afraid they're going to be messy.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
maybe because we are.
Yeah.
Maybe we're afraid
Yeah.
because, well, at least I am. I'm
Right.
like,
We see
I'm
all
like
the ways
Mr.
we
Green.
screw it up.
I'm Mr.
Yeah,
Green
yeah.
over here. Y'all are definitely
I don't know.
different than me. But like, I'm like learning now. I'm like, well, maybe that's like it's like a responsibility on our own part to
Yeah.
like grow up in the faith
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get to learning.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is like letting go. You know, we have a lot of good people, and I think well-meaning people who are trying to protect the church, trying to protect, you know, what we believe, how we practice, but they have done so much and so hard that they've like, okay, only these people can come
Ain't
in.
nobody coming in.
Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be a shakeup to some of our you know, and like the question, how do we, you know, how does the little old church lady who prays the rosary in the back and is, you know, 85 years old, how is she responsible? How is she a youth minister?
Yeah.
Right? Well, no, that's not my job. Yes, it is. Like, how are you a minister to young people? You know, and inviting them into that relationship. You know, I was watching something the other day, a clip. It was like they had this show in England where like these little kids, like 7, 8 years old, go and like spend time, if not live, in like an old folks home. And the like, you know, and at first they're kind of like, you know, and the elderly are like, I don't know about this, but at the end they're just like, please, can they come back after this is over?
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, and they just learn so much from it. Like, how are we not learning from each other? You know,
My stepdad takes the kids. He'll take the boys one weekend, the girls next weekend to nursing home between masses and stuff. And there are some negatives. Like the kids come home with a lot of candy.
sure, yeah.
I'm like, where'd you get that?
Yeah, and how old is that?
Yeah. Let me just clean that.
Yeah,
Sometimes they come home, you know, during flu season.
Yeah.
It's tough,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, they are rock stars over there.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's not great for a kid.
sure.
You know?
Yeah,
It's like being a TV child or
Yeah.
something. But I mean, it's amazing what kids can do. You know? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just the light you bring to those older folk. Like, I've talked about this before. I think it was to the bishop when we used to go like every Friday of the summer with my grandmother to the nursing home and do mass and a rosary.
Yeah.
And the priest would come around and all the old people would be kissing the rosary.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they had,
yeah.
like drool and stuff
Oh,
all over their
yeah.
face,
Yeah,
and we're like.
yeah. And you're like,
But
just
dude,
let it
no,
Yeah.
the joy of those people just from your presence.
yeah,
And, you know, it's tough because they've made friends over there
Yeah.
and their friends are dying.
yeah,
Right? And have died.
Mm.
And then, you know, a plug for father-son altar serving, that's been huge
Yeah.
for us. But we're there for the funeral,
Yeah.
you know, of our friends at the nursing
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
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 It's a lot for a kid to
Right.
wrap his mind
different
around.
tier
That's
of community.
that's the
beautiful.
natural things of life, you know. And
Yeah.
if we're not exposing our children to that, you know, if we're not exposing them to life in the church and the, you know, the cyclical nature of it,
Yeah.
you know, like then one day they'll experience it too hardcore, you know, and it's like I wasn't prepared for this, and not, you know, so I think there's a healthy balance to that, yeah.
Yeah, and experience that sacrament more than just like your papa dying or like
Right, yeah.
not to numb you to
Sure.
death and things,
Yeah.
but like that's just
Yeah.
another sacrament that you can experience.
Memento mori, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
as a child to think about, okay, I need to work on being a saint.
Yeah.
Even now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not, and you know, too much now. I think our young people, it's a delay. Everything's a delay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to delay. I mean, I find that with our young adults too. Is like, we have this is my own humble opinion, is that right now the way we're set up in our diocese and a lot of our church is that we hand our young people the faith. Here. I'll do it for you. I'll drive you there. I'll do this. You have to come to all these meetings, and then, you know, check. Then we'll confirm you. And so they're consumers of the faith. And then when they become adults, they are still, well, you know, do this for me. And so one of the hardest things that I have, you know, I ask our young adults is, what parish are you registered at? And most of them are like, well,
My
parents are registered. And I'm like, no. What parish did you, as an adult, write your name and address down and register? Like, where are you committed?
Yeah.
Because it can't be here on this, like, diocesan level. This can't be your church. So there's a well, they don't have, young adult ministry at my church. Guess who can start it?
Yeah.
You can, and this empowerment. This empowerment of you can do that. That's how the Ladies Altar Society got started. That's how Knights of Columbus, that's how these things happen in parishes. Is because somebody said, I want it, I need it, I'm going to do it. So I think, there's this delayed of I could be a young adult until technically I'm 40.
Yeah.
What? And I'm like, when do you just become an adult? Are there certain steps you have to go? So I was.
You have to grow a beard.
Yeah. I wasn't married till I was 35.
Graves in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't married till I was 35. And I had, people in my family that would say, this drives me insane, but they'll say things like, well, welcome to the real world. And I'm like, I'm 35. I have a job. I pay for my car and my apartment. I buy my own food. I go to Target every once in a while, and my bills are on time.
You even wipe yourself.
What? Yeah,
Have you
I
seen
know,
my credit
right?
score? It's
yes, I know. And I'm like, what world am I? Am I in La La Land? I don't know where I am. So there's even this, people, 50 years ago at 35 were having their 9th kid, and they've been to war 6 times, and they're retiring from 40 years in the industry. Yeah, and so it's just an interesting an outlook of just empowerment to our young people. You can do and not only can you, but you have the potential to be incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible saints right now. You can do that now, because they'll look at Carlos Acutis has been a huge
perfect timing.
well, yeah, they're like, wait a minute, you're telling me this guy played video games? And I'm like,
Adidas
yeah, right?
Is that a jumpsuit?
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you can be that, you can live that way now, and I taught 6th and 8th grade.
Tough
yeah,
years.
it's like 2 different
It's
worlds.
almost like they could use some grace.
Yeah.
Confirmation.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But they the questions that they have, and the enthusiasm that they have for life in general.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible thing in our diocese, I think.
So you were saying, Thomas, go ahead.
We just had Immaculata, Father Patty Huff spoke. He had been accused falsely of crimes, of a sexual nature of children, and he went through all that persecution, came out the other side. The person eventually said, "Never happened, made it all up," right? But early on, he was studying in Rome, and he had over for dinner Cardinal Ratzinger. And he cooked him some Wiener Schnitzel.
Oh, yeah.
As an Englishman. But the whole time he was complaining about the Jesuits and about how, he's more of a traditional priest, and the Jesuits, And after all that, Cardinal Ratzinger turns to him and says, well, why don't you join the Jesuits and become part of the solution? Right? So that's... The young people have this way of seeing the problem, identifying the problem, and solving the problem.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just look at their social media. So
I can't keep up with that.
Yeah. I mean, right or wrong, social media and young people who might not have even been alive, are the reason why they're re-looking at the Menendez brothers. What? That's all social media. Nobody said, we should, I'm a lawyer and we should maybe take a look at this. No. Yeah. Social media said, hey, this doesn't smell right with this. Yeah. And, that was what, over 35 years ago?
O.J. Simpson's trial kind of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the power that they have when it, can you imagine if if like the whole church was ignited by the faith of young people.
Yeah.
I mean, just the evidence of this podcast.
Yeah.
A young 16-year-old kid, no one knows this
Yeah.
until now. A 16-year-old kid is producing this,
Wow.
along with like all my social media posts that are
Yeah.
any worth a dang.
And his
That's
skills
his
are
stuff.
far
Yeah.
superior to ours.
Yeah.
We're just old guys.
Yeah, and
Like,
so
what do
it's
we
like
know?
just
We're like
Yeah.
Statler and Oswald from the Muppet Show, you know?
or Harry and Marv from Dumb and Dumber. No, it's Lloyd and
Lloyd.
Harry.
Lloyd
Harry and
and
Lloyd.
Harry,
I'm
yeah.
talking Home Alone.
I know, I
Some
said
of my
that.
two favorite movies.
I know.
yeah.
Joe Pesci was in Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just evidence of the times and
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important for us to realize that we're moving. There's a great book out there from Christendom to the Apostolic Age.
Yeah.
Right. We're moving out of Christendom, where all our institutions support Christianity.
Yeah.
To the point where all our institutions are being destroyed,
Yeah.
don't support Christianity, or against Christianity,
Yeah.
back to the Apostolic Age.
Yeah.
And how'd the apostles do it? Well, they had miracles and prophecy,
Yeah.
two primary modes of credibility. We can have those, and we can also have the creativity of youth.
Yeah.
Fill the gaps for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, let's revert back to your
Alright.
your Irish whatever's
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah.
Irish upbringing, your family, obviously your mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I
like-
grew up here in town in Baton Rouge. I went to St. Thomas More. just
Yeah,
down
we
the-
is
I
that how
know.
we first know each other?
Yeah.
Y'all were in
Yeah.
high school together?
St. Thomas More Elementary.
Yeah. So I'm a
Whoa.
year younger than your brother. Luke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, y'all
okay.
paved the way.
Yeah. So I went to St. Thomas More. My grandparents, my mom grew up in a big Irish Catholic family, and they lived literally across the street from St. Thomas More. So that was where we would walk home from school.
Oh, bro, there's like a
Yeah.
culture behind St. Thomas More from
Yeah.
2000. No, before whatever it was.
Yeah.
Man, we
Late 90s, early 2000s.
come
yeah.
on, like
Y'all. Yeah. So I was always Catholic. My nuclear family was always Catholic. I have an older brother and a little sister. I didn't find out till probably I could understand. So probably somewhere. My dad was Baptist. So half my family is Mississippi Baptist.
okay.
That's for real.
Yeah, oh yeah. I like to joke about my mom's family. Both my parents' family are from Mississippi, but my mom's family is from Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Oh,
They're from
they
the,
stick their
Yeah,
chest
from
out.
the Delta.
Yeah,
right?
and my dad's family is from Tylertown, Mississippi. You know, and so they're very,
Some
very
cowbells.
different backgrounds, like very different backgrounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and they met, and my mom has a really great. She spoke to the seniors at my high school. I went to St. Joseph's Academy, and she says, like, I married a Baptist man, and I never pushed the faith on him, but she wouldn't say it this way, but pretty much said, this is the way it's going to be in our house. We're going to raise our kids. They got married in the Catholic faith, and then she said, I never pushed the faith on him because if he was going to convert, it had to be him. Like it couldn't be because of me, And so she didn't. And my dad said, well, let me go to this RCIA, thing. He went all the way through it, and then he was like, well, I think, there's something to it. And so he converted, and my dad is like my husband, very calm, cool, collected, very kind of introverted, and never really talked about his faith. But it wasn't until my parents, when I was in 7th grade, we had the opportunity to move into my grandparents' house that was right there by St. Thomas More. And so here we are, in this big 2-story house, and a dear friend of mine, Father Chris Decker, it comes to be the associate pastor at St. Thomas More.
Oh,
When?
okay.
Yeah.
Forgot about
Oh, this was
that. So early.
It-
Like
yeah.
12 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, it was way back. Yeah.
I do not remember
So
that.
it was brief, but I said, hey, can we? Father Chris says, I need to ask your mom something, and I was like, oh Lord, okay.
It's trouble.
He said, can I come over to you? I said, yeah. I'll. And so I said, Mom, can we have Father Chris over for dinner?
I love it when he just comes and hangs.
Yeah. And so Father Chris comes over, and Mom, of course, cleans the entire 2-story. We're pulling stuff out the attic, and I'm like, Mom, he's not even gonna. Okay.
Oh, there's Santa.
Yeah. Because the priest is coming over, and so he comes over and he asks, he has a friend coming from Canada who can't, because of the rules, they can't stay at the rectory. He said, can he stay at your house? Because literally, I could walk down my driveway and see the rectory. My mom, of course, is like. She's not gonna say no to the priest.
I just pulled out all my bells and whistles.
And she's like, a stranger in my house, of course, And so our good friend now, Roberto, comes, and Roberto's from Canada, and he is a hoot because he's from Canada by way of Italy. Like he's a ton of fun, but he comes to our house, and probably a few days after that, Father Tom Dewey, who was the pastor at the time, is falsely accused of misconduct and is removed from the parish. And so Father Chris has to step into running a parish. Yeah. And he was like, here's Roberto. I gotta go, So we're like ferrying this Canadian around. Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, he's now one of our dearest friends as well. So, but what was great was during that time, Father Chris couldn't really be far from the parish. So he would come over to our house to kind of like take a break, hide a little bit, And I would walk in from wherever I was, and he'd be like sprawled out on the couch. Dad's bringing him like platters of cheese and glasses of wine. I'm like, what are y'all doing? And he's like, and they're talking, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And I think that was a real moment for my dad of like, yeah, okay, there's something more to what I've been living out of. I wouldn't say obedience, but
this goes deep.
Yeah. And so I really see it's been really interesting to see that in my dad in the last couple of years. Yeah.
And Father Chris was adopted. And it's just wonderful because wherever he goes, he gets adopted.
Oh yeah,
again. Yeah. He's been adopted many, many times.
Yeah, I often have to fight for like holidays. Oh yeah. So I'm like, I know you probably have
like a custody arrangement.
So, yeah. I'm like, I know you're probably going there for Christmas, but if you have time or need a place to be, well, now I've got a little bit of a hook in him because he's my daughter's godfather. So
nice.
I know. I'm like, you're godchild.
We're probably gonna do that next time.
Yeah.
I swear they're brothers from another mother.
I know we're gonna fight. Yeah. But I'm always like, your goddaughter would love to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
she's been drawing pictures of you.
Yeah.
Forgetting what you look like.
Yeah.
She drew with red hair.
I know. Yeah. So St. Thomas More was always a big part of our life for sure. It's where my mom went to school and grew up.
You were in school at St. Thomas More with Father Chris?
No.
Okay.
This was but I lived with my parents.
Okay. I'm going crazy.
No. Yeah, no, it was, I don't even know the year. I couldn't even guess.
Okay. So this was after we were out of elementary and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Because all I remember was Father Martin and Father Carver.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I remember. Mm-hmm. And I guess, who's the Irish one?
Father Mike Maroney.
Maroney.
Yeah. Let me tell you about Father Martin. Okay, so
is this
legend?
Eddie Martin or
no, Father Jerry Martin.
Right.
Father Jerry Martin. So when I was 4, he came to our house on Christmas Day, and I was like, this guy is like Santa Claus. He just comes to people's houses.
Doesn't he have a pretty nice like white beard?
He does now.
Oh,
yeah, but at the time, he was rocking some nice dark brown.
Yeah.
Facial hair. And so he came to our house on Christmas morning. I remember I could see him sitting on the couch with my parents, and it was always a memory in my mind. And I found out when I was an older adult. I knew forever. I knew since it happened. I have, between my sister Jessica and I have a sister Megan, who was born with calcium deposits on her brain and a heart defect. And so when they found a heart for her in California, they wouldn't give it to her because she was going to be mentally handicapped. And so she lived for 6 months, and then she passed away. they buried her Christmas Eve. And so Father Martin had come to our house on Christmas Day. That was, I didn't know that part until I was older.
Right.
And so, of course, I was at a Catholic community radio thing, and he was in the hall, and I was like, Father Martin. And he was like, you know how he is, sweetheart. That's just doing my job, doing my job as a priest. And I was like, what? And that to me was even as an adult and knowing priests, to be able to say Christmas is like Easter Junior. They're all over the place. But for him to have done that, to come and sit with our family, it was such a beautiful thing to realize, like a delayed realization of the beauty of the priesthood. Yeah. And how that's always been a part of my life, my dad's life, my mom's life, of course, but how that's always been, presence.
Yeah. I mean, between him and Father Carville, it was like Batman and Robin in a sense. Like Father Carville, of course, like the intellectual, like I don't know how we many of us could relate to him, but then Robin would come in and just he was like a sweetheart, Father Martin, but like talk about brilliant too in a different way. Like he remembered everyone's name. Even when we went to St. John Evangelist,
Zumo family,
I'm walking
that's pretty
through,
impressive.
and he's like, Mr. Zuma. I'm like, bro, what?
Yeah.
What? But our dynamic at St. Thomas More, we were so fortunate, just Catholic families. And we do kind of talk about like a lack of formation or lukewarmness of the Catholic gesture and upbringing. I mean, whatever that was. Right. But we definitely had some roots.
Oh yeah.
To this day, we're
even people who didn't, it's interesting now to see people who weren't always active in the church, like after we left St. Thomas More or whatever, and how they've come back. I've seen them in different parishes, raising their own families, and I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah, STN, Eagle
you
Pride,
tried to get away, but and that has a lot to do, I think, with what kind of roots you're able to
the community of St. Thomas More. It was just, I mean, we can't even compare sports or the fair with any other parish.
No.
But
it
really was like that. I guess like St. George and Mercy now have that flag to carry, but like in sports, I don't think we ever lost a football game from 5th grade to 8th.
No.
Maybe lost one basketball game, like my class. And there was like a culture of sports that was cool too.
Yeah.
But just
we were doing NIL deals. I mean,
before it was cool. We taught Saban how to do NIL.
Yeah. Get out of here with that.
So, but St. Thomas More was awesome. I forget that.
Yeah. It's a good place. That's where I think that's where I connected really with my faith, because I went to youth group there. We had the youth house. We had great youth ministers. Yeah. I mean, I was over there. I was like queen of the youth group. Like, so they had stuff 3 days, a week. I was there.
I think that's why I was disconnected from that, because I did all sports.
Yeah.
And I remember the house, but never was a regular in it, which stinks. Like, I'm wanting to implement a program into the sports of, the nature of being a man and going into battle. I want to create like a Catholic Christian program that the athletes can know how to approach life as a young boy and going into a man, but going onto the battlefield in a way to where we can have a little bit formation through the team nature. Because I think I missed out on so much.
That's still one of the things that I think youth groups compete with is sports. Yeah.
We could just get rid of all sports. That'd be a way.
We could. I'm down with that. I'm down with it. Me and Luke are like,
killed for
if you want to play sports, we'll let our kids play sports. But
my kids are blessed with a lack of athletic ability.
I'm pretty sure he's reading the catechism over there. I'm pretty sure I look over there and he has the catechism in his hand.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
I personally pass that on to my children. Hopefully it'll serve them well.
Yeah.
Scott's writing Vogue books that he he authors but doesn't put his name on them just to like manipulate his kids. Into the
You should read this one.
Yeah.
Here are the
It's
authors.
really good.
Great.
This guy's awesome. So yeah, I guess like into your ministry now with
Yeah.
St. Thomas More, and like what influence. I mean, obviously your mom is a
Yeah.
superhero, and your dad's
Yeah.
conversion.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your walk into ministry and the youth.
Yeah. So I went to LSU, and I just describe it as I wandered around. Like, I just would take classes, and I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to do psychology and work with people who had like multiple personalities. That's all, like that kind of stuff. Always like criminology. I didn't know it at the time that it was criminology, but like things like that. Really, I was like, what makes people think and do these things? And then I was
Good,
like,
you probably
yeah,
ended
yeah.
up in theology.
Yeah. And so I just kind of wandered around, and then a friend of mine, my friend Aaron, was like, I'm gonna go to college in New Orleans on the West Bank. I'm gonna study theology. I don't know how. I just went, me too. And she was like, what? And I was like, what? I don't know. And so I went back to my parents. Yeah.
Who's coming with me?
So I went back to my parents, and I was like, you're paying like $500 a month for tuition, because I had TOPS, and I had like the minimum of TOPS, but I was like, you want to pay $5,000? And my mom said, she was very good, because I was not a strong student. I'm not a strong student in general. I don't love academics. I'm not, I can do it. And it's not difficult, but I just don't want to. Like, I don't want, So she looked me in the eye, and she said, you have one semester. And I was like, what? She goes, you have one semester. And if you don't bring your grades up, you're coming back home. Because we were going to move at the time. She said, you're coming back home. You're going to pay me back. And you'll pay for whatever else you want to get. And at this point, I had nothing. Like, I had nothing to even make half a degree. I was like, oh, Lord have mercy. So I went, and I came home, printed out my first report card, 3.8. I highlighted it, put it on the microwave. I was like, y'all saw this? Y'all saw this? My brother, who's super, like, Eric took the ACT first time, 32, no prep. Like,
It's like Luke, right?
went to law school, never had to crack a book. I was like, so I'm like, look at this. And he's like, yeah, I got like a 4.2. I was like, shut up. But I loved it. And I just loved studying. I mean, philosophy came with a degree, which, like, they were like, if you say that wall is blue and I say that it's white, who's to say we don't see the same thing and call it something different?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what?
I think I saw this on TikTok.
Yeah. And he's like, or who's to say we see, we call it the same thing, but see something different. I'm like, I don't care. Like, but I see, I saw how, like,
this is broken.
Shifting the way your brain thinks helps you in theology. Like, the two go hand in hand, and I totally get it. But and it was awesome. It was a great experience. I had Dr. Baglow, Dr. Petrie for a year. Took all kinds of, I had a couple of other classes. I had to take a speech class in there.
Ugh.
Yeah, and so it was like, and then it was like great things like Thomistic, and then speech. Okay,
Let down.
Yeah, or like, moral theology and biology or something. I was like, this is ridiculous. But I finished. And I wanted to write my thesis on demonology and exorcisms.
Sweet.
And how they're portrayed in the media, and how they're so, like, what we think or what society thinks is so over sensationalized that people don't believe that it's true.
Like it's a ghost
But
story.
that there's truth in it. Yeah, that like, oh, that's so silly
And
that's not
not
true. Yeah, and so I went to tell Corey Hayes.
Corey Hayes, yeah.
who was like our last, like Petrie and Baglow left, and Corey Hayes was like, I'll never leave you, and I was like, thank
Petrie
you.
tree.
Yeah, and so we went to present. A friend of mine, she's now Dr. Sarah Denny, was like, tell him what you want to do, and I was like, okay. So I told him, and he was like, and I was like, or, and it felt like it was the moment in Miss Congeniality when she's like, or world peace. So I was like, or Christ as the new Adam and Mary as a new Eve. And it was like he went,
yeah, that's a safe
yeah, that. So that's what I ended up doing it on. Because he was totally right. He was like, I'm not telling you no. He was like, but these are all the things that you have to be aware of when you even go into studying that. Like, you'd have to get a spiritual director, and
You have to be like exercise.
yeah,
first.
yeah. I was very grateful because I was definitely not at any kind of point,
Yeah.
So I finished that. I went into teaching, taught for a couple years, and I thought, I know, I'll go back to school. So I applied to the Augustine Institute and got a master's from there.
And
So-
between there, we had our trip to Africa.
yeah, between there and 2009,
I'm glad you remember the year.
we went to Africa. Yeah, Scott and I were doing ministry out in New Roads together.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I didn't know y'all knew each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, we go
And
way
I
back.
was like, you know where I always wanted to go? And he's like, I know, I always wanted to go to Africa. And I was like, shut up. And so he knew a
There was
Jesuit
no
priest.
moment in this.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like,
no, it was just like, oh yeah, we're doing this. And then that was a good moment because
That
I
was
came
awesome.
home, I think at 23, and told my mom, I said, I'm gonna go with Scott. We're gonna go meet this priest over in Kenya, in one of the biggest slums in Africa. I'm gonna stay for like a month and a half.
And a convent.
Yeah, it's fine. And my mom in her
We came back with some sweet tangents.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we didn't. I mean, it was just dirt for me. I was like, that's just dirt. My mom in all of her, she's born to be a principal. Even before she was principal, she goes, okay, well, we'll see. Do some more. I even had a binder, and I was like, here's all the things. This is how much it's gonna cost. How we're gonna get the money. Blah blah blah. She's like, all right, well, do some more research. And I was like,
What more can
and so I grew a little courage, and I looked at her in the eyes and I go, Mother,
I never heard this part.
I'm not asking your permission, simply your blessing. And she cut those eyes across, and my dad's over in the corner like, yeah. And I was like,
girl.
okay, but I gotta go. So yeah, we went over there. I mean, like, we just like,
Yeah.
pretty much got on a plane
And
and
come to find out,
This
like,
is
right,
when you went from young adult to adult.
oh yeah, for
we
sure.
didn't, we did kind of jump in, which is how I liked it.
Yeah.
I didn't have a binder.
I knew I needed one. I knew I needed one.
And we got there, and they had just had a presidential election where there were massive riots.
Yeah.
And they had picked up a railroad track and just tossed it.
Yeah.
And man, so we went to a school for AIDS orphans in the Kibera slums in Nairobi. It was awesome. And were you there the day we came across the two men that had been stoned to death?
No, I'd heard about it. No, I did. Sean, one of the guys that we met down there, who was a missionary there before, did a really good job of like not letting me. He's like, the sun's going down, and I'm like, yeah, okay. We were at this like celebration. He's like, we got to go. You got to go now. And I was like, oh, okay, because he was like, you don't stay in Kibera when the sun goes, like when there's no lights, because it just gets, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's a square mile and a half where almost 1 million people are living with no running water, no like sewage system.
They
no
called them flying toilets.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? Like if you got a plastic bag, you did your toiletry businesses, and you threw it
Yep.
onto it. All the shacks had tin roofs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when it rained, all the roofs had
Yeah.
these plastic bags.
Yep.
So,
You were walking through mud going, this is mud. This is just mud. Yeah. But they have a really, it was interesting. I was talking to some of the students from the high school one day, and we were talking about restorative justice. And because they were talking about how, and I don't know how you can edit or whatever, you won't hurt my feelings, but they were talking about how they have a 3-strike rule, and it wasn't uncommon for them on their way to school to walk by people who had been hung up in the streets, or lit on fire or whatever. And I was like, well, what do you think about restorative justice? And they were like, we can't tolerate it. Like, you just can't tolerate it. it's a 3-strike rule. You're out. Like, and it was such as someone who had done a lot of, I wouldn't say ministry but research into what the church taught about restorative justice and prison ministry and that kind of thing. I've been really influenced by Sister Helen Prejean, and her encounters and what she talked about being involved with people on death row. It was such a eye-opening experience because I was like, for the first time they said it and I was like, okay, like there was no argument. There was no like, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. Yeah. So I'm just going to receive what you said. And the reality that this is people's reality. This is children's reality here. And I'm here. I'm not in Baton Rouge. I am in their world. And so I encounter them where they are. And it was interesting.
It really brought home that part of Catholic teaching, Catholic moral teaching about capital punishment, there is that kind of if in there.
Yeah.
If they can be adequately separated from society. If they can't be. And we're not saying kill everybody.
Sure, yeah.
But it becomes
Wait, so tell me a little bit about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, about
restorative justice?
Yeah, so restorative justice is you've committed a crime and we're going to send you to jail and restore you as a human being. So you see it in the jail systems, like any kind of reformative program. So
got Malachi Dad's angle.
Yeah, they're getting education and they're able to worship, right? And they're able to function as human beings separated from society, right? And to be restored as a human being, to full humanity, and so that's what we
and not just executed,
right? And not just and not
which we're implementing back in. Isn't there a guy about to be killed in Louisiana?
And so the church says basically, unless that everyone can be restored, unless they're a danger to society, which is basically if they're in prison, they're not a danger to society. So basically, we're not supportive of the death penalty. And how that's different in Kenya and in Kibera is they can't tolerate that. They can't. It's so many people.
Black or white.
It's like a pressure cooker, right? And so like if they let this guy get away with it,
sure,
then and so how do we deal with
they
it?
Publicly
the best way that we can.
Yeah. Public execution.
And quick, like we nip it in the bud and we nip it in the bud hard, and it's like okay.
And I did not know we'd be seeing that going in.
I didn't see it. Yeah.
It was just a very formative experience.
Right. So what had happened was they had these things called matatus, which are like 15 passenger vans that they fit.
One
40
actually ran into me.
Really?
Yeah. I knocked the side mirror off, and the guy came out and was upset with me.
Oh, that was Florence. They did that in Florence too.
They're crazy, yeah, because they fit like 40 people in this van, and like at one point I'm sitting over one,
it's like
and
a
there was
Windstar.
Yeah, there's like part of the engine is in my lap. I'm like, I don't think this is.
Getting a little warm.
This is up to code, Yeah, and so what had happened was one had been robbed, and they got robbed all the time, but one had gotten robbed. They took everybody out, I don't think anybody on the matatu was killed.
But the women, I think, were.
But they were harassed. They were harassed pretty good. And so what they did was they found him, they stoned them, and dumped him out of a matatu in a very public place to say, like,
sheesh,
this is it. Yeah. And so I'm like bebopping along, and I don't fit in there, And so it was things like that where I was like, I was laughing because of Roy Issa's interview. He was like, oh yeah, I was almost, sold to a princess?
Saudi princess.
Yeah. And I was like, I mean, I almost became some dude's wife and in the middle of Kenya. That counts. So we got on this bus. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay, so we get on this bus. And like it's me and everybody. I mean, our friend Paul was there. Paul and Grace.
Paul Callahan.
Yeah, Paul was an Irish man. So like he had been in Kenya for a long time.
He was right. He had written and published Swahili dictionary.
So he was all like every day he'd come out with like sunblock. You could see you could not rub it in this man. Like, red hair, and he was dating a Kenyan at the time, Grace, and then we had our friend Megan, who was from New York, and she was a New Yorker, and then Sean, who I don't remember where Sean is originally from.
Were they both at like Amherst together?
I think they were at. No, it was a Catholic. It was a little Catholic college, yeah. Because I remember going, but. I mean, mountain guy, totally cool, and so we all get on this bus. I don't even remember where we're coming back from, and we all kind of disperse, and this guy has his hand, like this, holding on, and he's leaning over me, and he's like, oh, and I was like, okay, and he keeps leaning in and asking, like, oh, and I was like, okay, and then I get a whiff. I'm like, oh, sir, it is 2:00 in the afternoon, and he is getting real close. So I look back at the back of the, like, I'm trying to find my friends, like, hello, and they're all sitting on the back bench of the thing, looking at me like, and I'm like. So I get up, I'm like, excuse me, sir. And I walk back to the thing, and they're on the back bench, right? And so I just kind of like squeeze in, and I'm like sitting there, and oh boy, starts making his way back, and I was like, oh Lord have mercy, and I'm like, okay, this is not my rodeo, like I'm just gonna. So then he sits right here, right? He starts calling us like traitors and like. Get off my bus. You don't remember this? Oh man. He was like, get off your bus. I want one of your women. Like, I want that one. And I was like, well, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Can you ask me on a date first? And so Sean is like trying to cut off Megan, who is her New Yorker's coming out. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there like, I mean, I'm from Baton Rouge, so I'm not a raging Cajun. But I was like, sir, like, I'm going to let the men do their thing because, I'm not, this is not my culture, but I'm about to.
Yeah.
You boys better, and Sean, our Irish friend who speaks Swahili, is just playing dumb, blah blah blah,
What? No.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, cool, and so this guy is saying all these things, and he starts I have my hands, and he starts reaching to touch my hands in my lap, and I was like, and I'm like, and Sean's like, oh, and he's calling Sean a goat, and Sean's like, what, and then he reaches in and grabs my face. And before I could turn around and be like, because it startled me, but I was about to go off, Sean turns around. Paul is our Irish friend. Paul turns around, starts telling him off in Swahili. Like, the guy at the front who's like taking tickets is looking back at me, and I'm like, you better get back here, dude. Like, and he's like, whoa, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going with you. So they throw him off the bus. And, and then Sean puts his arm around me, and he's like, yeah, she's with us anyway. And I was like, where have you been for the last 20 minutes while I'm about to get off this bus and go into the, African safari with this man? But yeah, so I was like, my mom was afraid of three things when I went to Africa. That I would get bit by a tiger and get rabies. Yeah. That I would get, I think, swine flu was the deal at the time, and that the Somalian pirates would come inland, because that was the big news thing, Yeah, and I was like, no one, I know y'all don't know my mama, but do not say a word. She cannot know about this. Yeah, and so I came home and I was like, let me tell you a story.
I'm alive.
Well,
yeah.
It's such a beautiful culture, but very much culture shock.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The amount, so much of their salaries, if they work for the state, it comes from, I don't want to call it bribery. If there's a nicer way to say bribery.
Yeah.
Remember when we went to the zoo?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
again, I leap before I look. And if you, I think Paul actually helped us. Like if you give money to the guards, they'll let you in the cages.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we were all hanging out with a cheetah.
Oh yeah.
It was
And like
awesome.
when we say zoo, like in the United States, it's like there's a fence and then a ravine and then another fence, and then like this was like a chain link fence.
Yeah.
And a cheetah. Like, that was it. And so Paul was like...
Or a lion.
Yeah. And so Paul was like, I mean, you're just staying out there. And, like, basically we stood out there and go, sure wish I could pet a cheetah. And a guy comes out of nowhere and is like, come with me. And you're like, yes, this is it. Yeah. So he went and grabbed the cheetah from behind and, like, started, like, massaging his neck, and that thing purred like you never heard.
It was like it was just kind of gnawing on my hand with, fangs like that.
It was like a big, I mean.
And they don't give them Xanax out there.
No.
Not
like ours do.
If they would have eaten Scott, they would have been like, oh, well.
That was a quick
How did you get into the cage? And there was like 10 of us in there. Yeah, I look back now and I'm like, I don't know. There were many times where I was like, yeah, I could have died.
Yeah. That's a long time. I didn't understand that.
Yeah. When it wasn't like we didn't go with a mission company or anything like that. So there was no structure. It was just like, hey, we closed the gate, the gates open to the convent where we were staying then, and they closed this time.
There's some breakfast.
If you're not,
and y'all just kind of did what they need, like help them with tasks and things.
I got to teach, I think, biology and a little religion. Did you get to teach too?
I worked with the post high school a lot.
We did like a children's book and stuff.
They had just gotten computers donated, so they were learning typing. So it was like, what is that program? Sally Brown Mayers, I don't know, but they were like, Kathleen, I am now at 5 words per minute. What are you? And I was like, no. Okay.
Oh, no.
And they were like, what? And I was like, no, you'll get there. It's fine.
This is
helpful. So the high school will pay for their college as well. But the year in between, they work a year of mission work. So they go out, of service, to the community. And they were just preparing for their college year. And so they were like, they just got in computers and they all did, but they were learning how to do PowerPoint presentations. And so they had all just learned like the animations. And so it was like every word was a fly-in, And so it was like 3 hours later, you're like,
that's me in 5th grade, so I was more.
Yeah, exactly.
Not better than them.
But they had so much. It was great. Just there, like, to see things that we certainly took for granted, that they were like, wow. And how they automatically, like, I see it as an automatic, but they saw it as, like, this is going to feed my family. Yeah. Like, learning PowerPoint is going to feed my family.
They had, like, certain certificates they could get.
Yeah. So.
Do you remember the orphanage?
Yeah.
And even before that, somebody sent us with giant duffel bags of little pillows. Do you remember those? Do you remember where they came? I
don't.
I just remember us having like 1,000 little plush pillows to give to the orphanage.
Yeah.
But what will always stick in my mind, they had like kind of a rafter system in the room with the little hanging chairs the kids can bounce up and down in. And there were like 40 little babies all bouncing up and down. It was like the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I was like, if my mom wouldn't have killed me, you're all coming home with me. Like, we got a big house. Come on,
Yeah.
But yeah, they're I saw 2 different, like, one orphanage we went to was for preemies to 2-year-olds, and it was a beautiful old house. I mean, big.
I made it to
you
that
didn't, because I went with Siobhan, and I went.
Another Irish girl.
Yeah, Siobhan. Yeah.
Spelled not at all like it sounds.
Yeah, no. I was like, what? Yeah, that's not it. But okay. Yeah. And so we went, and they were well taken care of. It was beautiful. And then we went into one where, like, unbeknownst to me, we were on an undercover mission because there was abuse happening at this, And I started asking questions, and Megan was like, and I was like, oh. And so she told me, you might not have been there, but it was like a Tale of Two Cities, because they were actively trying to get information on this orphanage that was not doing right to kids who were, who had lost their parents.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I took I have this beautiful little picture of these two, these two little cherub babies. And
I think that was like your profile picture.
It was for a long time. Yeah. Because they were at the orphanage that I didn't know until after there was bad things happening there.
Dang.
And I seriously considered becoming a mom at 23 years old. Like, wow. I was like, I don't know who these two babies are, but pack them up. Yeah. And those 6 over there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
And okay, y'all come on too.
Yeah,
come on,
Just come on.
But yeah, it was incredible.
Man. So this was, I guess to like double back.
Yeah.
Sorry to completely.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that was awesome.
Well, we haven't talked about
yeah.
in years. It's just wonderful, all those old memories.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So that was before. So you taught school for 10 years?
Just before. Yeah, that was just before I came. That was since 2009, and then I started teaching in 2011. Yeah.
Was that at St. Joe's Academy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I came back from Africa, was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Surprise. I was like, I just want to make sure I don't have any, like foreign malaria diseases. And they were like, no, but you got diabetes. And I was like, cool.
What?
And then I ignored it as, all 23-year-olds do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like an idiot. And then finished school and then went into teaching. And then halfway through teaching my first year, I was like, I think I'm dying. And they were like, you have diabetes, you dum-dum. And I was like, okay.
It's something that's already very difficult.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's such a weird, it's like type 2 diabetes, like type 1 you get when you're a kid and you don't type 2 is like, oh, you're fat and you don't exercise. You have type 2 diabetes. You did this to yourself. And it's like, what?
We got a lot of exercise.
Yeah, look, I was like, pumping out thousands of miles. Maybe not miles, maybe steps, but yeah. So that was the whole thing. They were like, how do you do what you do? And I was like, because I was teaching at the time. And I said, well, I wake up and I go to school. Sometimes I sleep at school. I come home, I go to sleep, I wake up, I eat something, I go to sleep. And they were like, so that's been a fun part of the journey. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that and polycystic ovarian syndrome, which the two go hand in hand. It's like, it's all insulin related and things like that. So basically the phone call was from a doctor that I'd never met. I'd never met before I went to see him. I'd aged out of my pediatrician. They were like, "You're 23. You cannot come.
That's like
You cannot come back here." And I was like, "Okay."
But you have the suckers.
Yeah.
You're
And
so
they were like,
nice.
"That's why you have diabetes. You keep eating all our suckers." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And he called me at 5:30 on a Friday afternoon and said, "I got your test results back. You have type 2 diabetes and PCOS. Okay, call if you have any questions." And I was like, "What?" Yeah. So then I, got on the line. And it was like, type 2 diabetes, you're going to be, insulin for the rest of your life, and you could die. And polycystic ovarian syndrome, you're never going to have kids, and you might die. And I was like, oh, what? Okay. So that's why I said, ignore. Yeah.
We'll deal with this later.
Yeah. There's plenty of time for that, Yeah. But then my mom would she would say things like, we'd be in the car, she'd be like, oh, do you remember so-and-so, from St. Thomas More usually? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember their grandmother? And I'd be like, yeah, she used to come to school all the time, like school. Well, she's dead. And I'd be like, what? And she's like, she had diabetes and they chopped her leg off. And I'm like, okay.
So what are you hinting at here?
Like, all right, Mom. But she was really good at just in your own time.
And so your daughter.
Yeah. So fast forward, I taught for 10 years. I worked for 1 year in there at Women's New Life Clinic
Okay.
Yeah, I
as their
remember
executive
that, yeah.
director. Turns out most of that job is fundraising, which also turns out I suck at. But they were so kind and just so patient and just like, and so at the end of a year, they were like, and I was like, yeah.
See you
I was
later.
like, thanks for the opportunity. They were like, we love that. They're so good, you know. But they needed somebody who actually knew how to. I was like, can I just go and say, hey, listen, we need some money.
Yeah,
They're like,
it should
no,
be
you
that
gotta
easy,
like,
right?
Yeah.
you got. There's like a game. I was like, I don't want to play the game, but
Angie
there's an art
Thomas
to it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There's an art
She's
to
great,
it. Yeah, and I just was not. I was not an artist.
It's a charism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So taught, and then, you know, my entire life I've been to like Steubenville conferences and retreats and been in
We
the
went to a
youth
couple
group.
of those together.
Yeah.
Atlanta, was it Atlanta?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot Atlanta. You know, and there's always like the women's session where they're like, write down what you want in a man and stick it in your Bible. And I was like, okay.
So we don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
This-
So I write it down, I stick it in there, and like as I get older and older, like the list gets smaller and smaller, and I'm like, Lord, I need a man. Just a man will do, you know. And so I get on like online dating stuff every once in a while, and then like even I'm gonna say it, even the Catholic online dating, there's some weirdos, and there's a lot of them.
Opportunists,
Like, they're
man.
very
Yeah.
probably holy men. They're just like.
Oh, okay. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also some of those too, where
Yeah.
you're like, what? Like, okay, I think you might be on the wrong side, but all right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's so Catholic that they're Protestant.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. Some of them have very, very traditional views of like what women should be and do, and I was like,
Here's your bonnet.
yeah, I see you. What do you think about, you know? And I was like, I don't think about that. Good day, sir. You know. So I'd like given up, and I was like, all right. Like, and my mom would bring home. She was the principal at St. Michael. She'd bring home every time a religious order would come. She'd bring home the pamphlets and be like, this order came, you know. And in fact, actually, I did. At one point, a friend of mine's mom was like, the same friend I went to Holy Cross with. She was always she was my youth group mom. Like, she's the reason I am familiar with charismatic renewal.
And
Patricia Walther.
Patricia.
Yeah. And one day she said to me and Erin, her daughter, I'll pay for you to go for a weekend with the Nashville Dominicans. And I was like, heck yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, and she was like, just be open. And she was always the one, like, at Steubenville conferences when they were like, if you've ever felt a calling, she'd be like, that's you. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Okay. I was like always going down for like altar calls and stuff. But we went, and I was like, well, I'll just be open. Because I never, I was like, I don't want it to be, I'm not dating, so I guess I'll be a sister. But I'd always been open. I'm like, Lord, whatever you want. And I was always, any time I'd experienced a religious sister, I was very attracted to that, the joy. You just can't, there are some that I'm like, I don't know where your joy is, but to that, you just can't not be attracted. And so I went, and I was like, Lord, just be very clear, because if not, I'm going to join. Like, that's just how I am. I'm like, oh, this sounds great. And so I got there, and if you've ever been to Nashville Dominican Mother House, it's this huge old, it's like creaky floor, wood. I mean, it's beautiful. And so they lead me upstairs, and they're like, and it's this dormitory, and it's like old school, almost like a hospital, right? So like just separated by curtains.
Yeah.
And so they're like, this is the dormitory. We're silent up here. And I was like, we're what? And they were like, silent. And I was like, oh. And I was like, okay, 5 minutes, strike one. That's okay. We're still doing good, right? And they're like, we're just going to leave you up here, put your stuff down and come join us. And I was like, okay, great. Now, this is like a 5-day retreat. So I was like, okay. And so then I did what any, well-respected young lady would do when they're left alone. I snooped, right? As I was snooping around, like looking, I'm like, oh, what's in here, And I come out on the landing of the steps, and I kid you not, I have no idea why they were there. I do not know. A rack of head to toe habits, like veil to shoes. First thought that came through my brain, I wonder how long it would take for them to realize I wasn't one of them if I just put this on and went, sister, oh, hello, sister. And I was like, ooh, strike 2. And I was like, okay, all right.
Or just a souvenir. Just
Yeah,
take one of them,
I know. I was like, these things are pretty legit.
It's October, right?
Yeah. And so then there were several other strikes, but the third one was that night. There was like this. I was with these just beautiful, holy, pious young women, and I felt like at 9:00 when it was lights out, there was like this collective like sighed amen, and everybody just went amen and went to sleep. And I am legit under the covers playing Angry Birds, eating a Snickers bar, because I'm a night owl, and I was like, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I probably should be doing some kind of night prayer. Oh man, thank you, Jesus!
She's
right? And I was
like Haley Maria from Sound of Music.
Oh,
yeah.
I was gonna say Whoopi Goldberg
Oh,
from Sister
all
Act.
of them, all of them. I was Besides the criminal past, I was definitely
not a lounge singer.
Yeah.
But
No,
you
no.
have some
I
amazing
have
music.
done. Thank you. So I was very thankful that the Lord was very clear that was not it, and I was able to enjoy the rest of the, And it also taught me like, okay, this is not it, but you were open and faithful and obedient to a yes, and so continue to do that, and I will reward that. And so, so I did online dating. Never, I was always at these I always joke because I would go to. It used to be Dunmox Ministries, but Echo with Brian Butler, and like all these people are pairing up and finding their spouses, and I'm like, this is like my 12th one, dude. But.
So they're not Dumb Ox anymore?
No, they're now Echo Community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Kathleen, I'm surprised we didn't go on dates.
I know.
We were both old and single.
I know. Look, So I was online for one last and I said, I'm going to cast my nets, right? Jesus said, cast the nets and you will be fishers of men. And I was like, you better give me some men. All right? And so I did. And I messaged, everybody. I didn't, unless there was like a red flag, I was like, hey, how are you? My name's Kathleen. And this one guy messaged me back and he asked about my dog, my dog Chunk, who was a French bulldog. And he was like, oh, I like your dog. Did you name him from the Goonies? And I was like, well, yes, I did. And I was very much like, I don't want to play around. Let's just meet. I don't want to spend 6 months talking to you on online, which, some people are like, take your time because you don't know if they're mass murderers.
Yeah, but you've been to Africa.
What? Yeah. I was like, and the time is dwindling, my friends. We gotta. And so I said, well, let's meet at. His name is Adam, and he was from Florida, and I said, let's meet at Mid-City Beer Garden. Do I drink beer? No, but I was trying to be cool. So I said, let's meet. So he gets there. Cool. Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
Have a spritzer.
Yeah, so he gets there ahead of me, right? And so I meet him, and he is everything I am not. He is an engineer. He reads all the rules of every game before you ever play it. Yeah, and I'm like, let's play. Making up rules. He's extremely introverted. He doesn't talk much, and so I met him, and of course, he's like, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what kind of beer do you drink? I don't drink any of that pansy beer like Miller Lite, trying to be cool. And the lady comes around and she's like, what will you have? And I was like, I'll have a Blue Moon. It was the first thing I could think of and the only thing I could tolerate. She was great. And sir, I'll be back with your Miller Lite. And I was like, oh no. No. Yeah. Yeah. And then he was like, well, I went to Florida. I graduated from Florida, and I was like, well, it's been nice. Thank you for the beer. And he was like, well, actually, I think I have not sweet tickets, and I always get it wrong. It's club seats. Club seats to the LSU Florida game next week. And I was like, I'm back.
Yeah. You got me?
Yeah. So we made plans to go to the game. And
so had he graduated from Florida?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a couple years older than me. And he's 5 years older than I am. So
so he's probably as mature as you are now.
Yeah, he's probably way more mature than I am. Like, this man is probably an 80-year-old man in a 40-year-old body. But we had plans to go to the game so it was like, this was a Thursday, and this was the next weekend, so a whole weekend, some days. And he called me the Friday before the game, and he said, I know we have plans tomorrow. And I was like, oh no.
Oh,
And he said, but I can't wait to see you.
That's
Can
awesome.
I take you to lunch today? And I was like,
Nice.
what? And so he's a Methodist. But what, and I think, you know, that the openness that my mom had to, and the experience that I had with other religions in my own family, was I was like, well, I'm not gonna close the door, because, you know, like, and some people that I know are very like, I will marry a Catholic, and that's, you know, I think that's beautiful, and that's what you want, you know.
This way we're increasing the number of Catholics.
Yeah. So he's a Methodist from Florida, engineer. We dated so we met in October, and by
2 weeks.
Yeah. But actually, yeah. So we met in October, and then by June we had proposed, and it was like June of COVID. And so I said, great, we'll get married in a year and a half. And he was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And so, so when we got married, it was really funny, because I was like, here are all the things and I thought like I had to come in like a bull. Because I was like, here are all the things that we're going to do as a family. Like, we're going to raise our child. We're going to do, you know, and he was
Here's
like.
the binder.
Yeah. And he was like, okay. Yeah. And I was like, okay.
That's the same binder I gave Haley.
Yeah. Right?
She's not looking back at you.
Yeah.
She's still reading it right now.
Yeah. And so.
Was Father Chris the celebrant?
Father Chris was our celebrant. Yeah. So we had 3 priests, and he was like, how many priests do we need? And I was like, well,
That was
actually,
like me, just an army.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, so we got married, and then we decided we're going to start a family, just because I was 35 when we got married. And so I was like, listen, I have type 2 diabetes, I have PCOS. It may not ever happen, and I'm okay with that. Like, because he had his own.
There's
like,
still those 20 kids.
Yeah, I know.
Africa.
I was like, and we talked about that. We talked about
yeah.
adoption, you know. And I said, we have a short window of time, and, you know, it just might not happen. And I want you to know that I'm okay with that. I don't need to have children. Like, I would love to, you know, it would be beautiful. It would be great. I want to have your children, you know, like, I didn't marry you so that we could hurry up and have kids, so that, you know, that part of me could be fulfilled. There was a lot of like, I want to make sure that that's clear. And so we tried for 2 years, and we went to the doctor and did just like the Clomid, you know. At the time, I had gotten on a new medication that it's Mounjaro, right? So this new medication that came out for diabetics.
Wow,
that
good
was
timing.
like, yeah. So like for like 7 months, it brought my A1C down to a 4.9. Which is like non-diabetic. I was off all diabetic medication. Yeah, it was incredible. And I said, well, let's go see the fertility doctor, the fertility specialist. Let's go another step. And I said, there's not going to be a lot of things we can do, and I'm not about to bankrupt us because I need to have a baby.
Yeah.
I said, but let's just see what our options are. And so we went, and he said, I mean, he was great. It was an uncomfortable like conversation, because it was, you know, and in 10 minutes he had said, in 10 minutes he had said, you know, you're on Mounjaro. I won't see you or do anything with you until you're off it for 2 months. And so it was like this thing that had changed my life. Now I have to get up, just because they don't have the all of the research
knowledge
for it.
behind it.
And so we made the decision, and it was like, I could tell Adam, you know, was super, super uncomfortable. And I said, well, let's just try it and see where we are. And so for 2 months I got off it. And during that time I was going to go to England with a friend of mine to visit another friend of ours. And she was like, while you're here, I'll take you to this place where a Marian apparition happens called Our Lady of Walsingham.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. There's one in Houston too.
Yeah. And so what happened was, in like 1000s, there was this lady who owned a manor, and very well to do. Her name was Racheldis.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That sounds fancy.
And so Our Lady appeared to her and said, I want you to build a replica of the Holy House of the Annunciation, so that people of England can make pilgrimage to it. And these are the exact specifications.
Awesome.
And Racheldis was like, bet, you know. So she gets going. There's all this kind of like
oh, we don't have the spot, we don't build it, right? So she wakes up one day and it's built, and Our Lady was just like. So it's on this, it's on this the grounds of this manor. There's an abbey that's built around it, right? And
So is it like indoors now?
no,
Or
it's
just-
so. In fact, because Catholics don't have a great history in England,
yeah.
they
It's a good way to
destroyed
be
it.
a martyr.
Yeah, they destroyed it, and they destroyed the abbey, and the site is still there. But what stands is about a mile down the road. There is it was called the Slipper Chapel, where all the pilgrims would come and pray, and the Catholics own the Slipper Chapel, so it's still intact. And they would come and pray and take their shoes off and walk the rest of the way in penance to this site, And so my friend Gemma is like, we're gonna go to this site, and I was like, okay. And at the time, I had bought this swaddle. It's the mantle of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I bought it and stuck it in my undies drawer, which is where all your good things go.
Yeah.
And so I stuck it in there, and I was like, I'll either use this or I'll give it away, and God will tell me when it's time to give it away, and that'll be like, it's time to let this go. And I said, so at the last minute, I'm like packing things, and I was like, I don't know why, you're coming with me. So I stuck it in my bag, and I tied it around my bag when I went to Walsingham. And so we go to Walsingham, we spend the first day at the Slipper Chapel, and I was like, oh yeah, this is so beautiful. And then we're going to the site the next day, and Gemma, who is a spiritual director, she was like, this is what I encourage everybody I bring here to do, because there's this little pathway in, and then it opens up into this field where the Abbey Church was, and the back arc of the Abbey Church still stands. And so you walk in this huge field with this beautiful arch in the back.
Like where the back of the church sanctuary would have been or something?
Yeah, or like the entrance too.
Oh,
yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
So the front of the church, and then the space where the house stood is marked. But it's this big open field, and it's sunken in because, but you have to walk through almost like the secret garden to get there. And she was like, so this is what I tell people, is take your time on this path as you walk in, and really tell Our Lady what you want. Like, tell her your prayer intentions. And I was like rolling my eyes. I'm like, oh God, whatever. And she's like, and then listen. And I was like, so it's starting to drizzle because it's England, and I'm like, okay. And they walk ahead of me, and I'm like, all right, I've been to some holy places before, so I was like, all right, Our
This
Lady.
wasn't even standing anymore.
Yeah. I was like, I don't even know if this is real, because the Anglicans are I don't know what's going on, And I was like, all right. I was like, listen, Our Lady, because this is how,
That's how we talk.
Yeah. I was like, listen, there's nothing new. I just want, I've said this a million times, one happy, healthy baby. Holy if you want, but I can work on that, So I said, I just want one happy, healthy baby. And I remember, it was like my two friends are in the distance, and it was like the entire pathway shut down. And I've never heard, I don't claim, I've never heard, usually when I talk to Jesus and I demand things, he just looks at me and goes, I've never heard the voice of Jesus. I've never heard, very clearly I hear Our Lady say, why do you ask for just one?
Wow. Why do you ask for just one?
Why do you ask for just one? And and in the same instance, it was very clear. She wasn't saying, I'm about to give you 10 babies. She was saying, why is your prayer so pathetic? And I was like, dang, okay. So then I'm sobbing, I'm like,
Wow.
okay, I am horrible, and I'm like, I'm a horrible prayer. My prayers are,
You said the path cleared?
well, I felt that way.
Okay.
Everything, I felt like the path was a pretty open path. I felt like it just came in on itself, and Our Lady was just there saying ding dong, why are you so dumb? And I was like, I don't know. Help me, But it was very clear. She said, why do you ask for just one? And it was very clear, why is your prayer so small? Why is your prayer so small?
Wow.
And I said, okay. Right? And it changed the whole rest of the trip. Just interiorly, I was like, how do I do what I do and ask for so little? Why don't I believe that God can do all the things, right? And so I came home, and I had left for England and got on the plane and had my cycle, right? And so like I was like, no, this is a great way to start the trip. And I came home, was like all over the place in the month of November, and then at the beginning of December, my husband and I were talking, and I said, we have to go. It's time to go back to a fertility specialist. And I kind of hesitated asking him or talking about because I knew he wasn't.
It had been the 2 months.
It had been 2 months, yeah. But I knew he wasn't like super comfortable with this guy, and I was like, this is gonna be bad. And he said, I think we need to get healthy first. He was like, I think you need to get back on your medication. He's like, we'll try again in a year. And I was like devastated. And, you know, we agreed. It wasn't like he was like, we're not doing this. He was very much like, we need to get into a place where we can.
Your husband or the doctor were saying this about you?
My husband, yeah. Where we need to get into a place where we're healthy so that then we can care for a child should that be what we end up doing. You know, and interiorly I'm devastated because I'm like, 37 years old. You know, and so
you're just getting warmed up.
Yeah, well, and so I said, I think you're right. I'll message my endocrinologist, tell him I need to get back on this medication. And I took a pregnancy test to prove that I wasn't pregnant, and I could not. And I clocked it a month to the day that I was in Walsingham was when we found out I was pregnant.
So it was a positive pregnancy?
It was a positive pregnancy, yeah.
You could not
I
prove
couldn't prove that I wasn't pregnant. So I was like, so I had messaged him and been like, okay, I need to get back on it. And there was the weekend, right? Monday morning I take the test and I was like, oh no, you know, and I'm like, so then I messaged him back. I'm like, never mind, surprise, we're having a baby. Yeah, and so yeah.
Finding out that.
Yeah, and then I go to the doctor and they're like, you're 6 weeks, and I was like, there's no way, because like I was in Walsingham.
You were pregnant in Walsingham.
I was pregnant it was implantation. Like I was already pregnant when I went to England, and so
like fertilization. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So like all of the entirety of the pregnancy, you know, they're like, you're geriatric, and you know, yeah, like this, because I told my husband when we got pregnant, I said, I'm gonna tell you this right now. It might not last. Like this might not be. It might not come to term, just because of all the things. And so I said, so just keep that in mind.
You're emotionally preparing him to prepare yourself.
Yeah, like I know this. I've lived with this, you know, my entire life, or not my entire life, but for a long time. You know, I don't expect anything. But the entire pregnancy, I was like, this is Our Lady's baby. This is not my baby. So. Whatever happens, like, and we had a great pregnancy. She was born. We were induced at 37 weeks. You know, I labored for like 36 hours, and then was like.
How many pounds an hour?
She was like 7 pounds.
Oh,
something. Right. Yeah, she was healthy. Yeah, so I labored for like 36 hours, and then was like, all right, wrap it up. Let's go to the C-section. You know, and they were like, it's okay. Like it was a disappointment. I was like, That's
Let's
okay.
See this girl.
I'm all right. Let's do that, you know. And so, like, even to the, like, you know, Sharon, she was in the hospital 2 weekends ago. We had to bring her to the ER because she had labored breathing. And they're like, you know, sticking saline and snot suckers up her nose, you know. And I was just like singing the Hail Mary to her. And I was like, I'm not, you know. And they're poking her and they're like, do you want to step out? And I'm like, no. Cool, calm as a cucumber, because I was like, this isn't my baby. Like, it is. Yeah. And the Lord has entrusted her to me. And okay, you know, but like, this is Our Lady's baby. Yeah.
And you named her?
Cecilia. Cecilia May is her name. Yeah.
Cecilia May.
Yeah. And so like, yeah. And so now people are already like, all right, when's number 2 coming? I'm like, okay, well, hold on.
You tell us that.
Yeah. My husband, like 2 weeks after we got home, was like, I don't know if I can do that again. I was like,
it's really
I'm
rough
sorry. What was it? Please tell me what you did. Yeah, but she's and she's a great baby, you know, great baby. Yeah.
She's how old now?
So she's almost 8 months. Yeah. 8 months. Yeah. It's a little fat little baby. Yeah. I love her so much. Yeah, she's so great. So it was just like, and I like, my prayer was in that whole month of November too, and even now was like, and if not, you're still good. Like, if the moral of the story, like, and I almost wish that it wouldn't have been the way that it was, because, like, if I hadn't have had that experience with Our Lady, and Mary would not have had, if God had not seen fit for Cecilia to be conceived, like, he still would have been good. You know what I mean? Like, and what a great story that would have been as well, to be able to say, yeah, Our Lady was like, your prayer sucks, you know? And then to then spend, time, I feel like the story is like, and then bingo bango, there was a baby, but for so many people, that's not the story, and the way that they, like, the Lord changes their life in a way that doesn't grant them what they want, more so what they really desire and need, so it's a great story, but I'm almost like, okay, the whole time I was pregnant, I was like, don't let me miss anything, because if there's something else besides this that you're trying to teach me, I mean, I know, okay, yeah, my prayer sucks, like, but don't let me miss it, because seemingly my prayer has been answered, you know what I mean? So
sounds like something you can be unpacking for a lifetime.
for years, of just Our Lady being like,
I never heard of her till Haley in Houston. The Cathedral High School has Our Lady of, how do you say it?
Walsingham. Yeah.
I never heard of it, and so
Yeah.
that's where
the
in
rocking
England,
parishes
Yeah.
in Houston too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be unpacking that one now.
Yeah. And she's not an official,
Shoot.
like, I didn't realize that there are, like, maybe about a dozen official Marian apparitions.
Right.
And then there's, like, tons of other ones. And she's
Right.
not one of the official, but
Is Medjugorje yet?
No,
But
because it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talk to what?
But you talk to any British Catholic and they'll tell you.
Sure.
That's it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Beautiful. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you were pregnant when
Yeah.
that was happening.
Yeah. She was like, hello?
Already done
Yeah.
this.
She's like, we already did the thing. Like, it's already, oh, okay. It was definitely like a Peter moment, right? Like, okay, dum-dum, like, let's go. Get with the program. How long have you been doing this? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, little Cecilia.
Praise
Little Cece.
God. Yeah, Cece.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of territory.
Yeah, sorry.
Some good stuff.
Oh, we still got more though, unless you gotta get back to
No,
We'll call Bishop and tell him, yo,
I bet, look.
we just get him warmed up.
I'm
This
doing
is
the
on
Lord's
the clock,
work.
right?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
counts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're youths.
Yeah. Yeah, you're young adults. I mean,
Yeah, I only have
Maybe
a couple
Jacob
whites in
is.
this.
yeah, I'm about to say, Scott, I think you might have aged up. But
Scott's written many of books and has grown many whites.
Yeah.
Have leather-bound volumes.
Yeah. So, do we go into Red State Catholic? Do we go into, what's the underground thing?
Catholic Underground?
So which
Yeah,
comes first
yeah.
or whatever?
Yeah, so I did we're talking about Catholic Underground. So
How long did that?
I don't know.
Tell us what that
So,
is,
like,
though, because I'm unfamiliar.
So 2000, I think right around the time I started teaching, Jason Romero, a friend of mine, called me up and said, hey, they started this new Catholic radio in Baton Rouge. And I'm like, cool. And they're like, do you want to do a radio show? And I was like, I never done that. Yes, I would. So we did a youth show called The Way Home. And it was like, Dave Dawson at the radio station was so good. Because he was like, yes, come and do.
He's
Come
so
in, like,
positive.
you've never done radio before? I don't care. This is going to be great.
Sound just like him.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he and his wife Lisa were our marriage prep
Yeah.
they're
couple.
wonderful.
So good.
We're like halfway related.
Oh, they're,
Little Savios.
yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure you're like halfway related to the majority of
Italians,
yeah.
Baton Rouge.
So we did that for a while, and it kind of like, it just kind of petered, and so at some point, I don't even know when. I'm the worst at like timelines.
Me too.
But at some point, Father Chris Decker was like, hey, I do this show called The Catholic Underground. And what it started was with him and two of his buddies from seminary, started it in like the basement of the seminary, like, and it was a nerd tech, I say nerd.
It's probably Scott.
It was a
involved.
tech / like, Star Wars / not Star Wars, excuse me, Star Trek. Their Star Trek, yeah. Type, podcasts before podcasts were really a thing. And so what had happened was, I think he was looking for, or he tells me all the time, like he was looking for like the Catholic on the street. And I was like, you just want a dum-dum in there. Yeah, Catholic. He goes, what? And so we did it. And then I really wasn't paying attention. It got picked up by a bunch of like TV stations. Yeah. So we would film it. And when we started filming it, I realized, I need to like put myself together before I go and do this. And then it got like, the production got pretty good on it. So one time I was speaking at a conference in San Antonio, and they were like, this bishop is here, Bishop so-and-so. He's like really excited to meet you. And I was like, okay. And I, whatever, I just did, and so I'm like, this is my second year doing the conference, and I don't know how I got hooked up with this conference. I don't do conferences all over the place, but like, so then, they're like,
call me up.
Yeah. So they were like, I love doing them, but this was like a one-off. And so it's my second year though. And they were like, okay, Bishop's like really excited. And they kept saying this, and I was like, so I was getting kind of full of myself. I was like, he must have. It's like, I don't know who this guy is from Adam, And so I meet him, and he's like, oh my gosh, like I watched the Catholic Underground, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, cool, dude. And then we're riding the bus to this dinner for all the speakers, and I was like, he asked me, he said, are you nervous about tomorrow? And I said, oh no, like I did this last year. It's great, like it's a great conference. I said, are you nervous? And he's like, I'm a little nervous. And I was like, no, don't worry. Like, don't worry, dude. It's going to be awesome. You're going to do great, right? And so I still have no idea who this guy is, right? And so then we get to dinner, and he's like, hey, can I sit next to you? And I was like, okay, sure. I got to go to the bathroom. And so I go to the bathroom, and I'm like, Google Doc. Yeah, it's a bishop. So I was like, Google.com. Who is this dude? It happened to be Bishop Robert Reed, who is the president of Catholic Television out of Boston. And he loved the show. And so then I'm in the bathroom texting Father Chris. I'm like, Father Chris, Bishop Reed is here. And he's like, ah. And then I was like, I think he's fangirling. And he was like, he probably is. Go talk to him. And I was like, I can't. So then I came back to the table, and I was like, and it was so cool. Turns out he was the keynote speaker for the conference. Like, did the whole I was just a workshop presenter. Like, nobody really ever saw me, and he's the keynote. And I was like, you did good. You did, like, after his talk, I was like, you did it real good, But yeah, so we did that for a long time. Father Chris moved out to New Roads and took on a parish. Well, he was out further, but took on a parish with a school, and it's been a lot more than he's been assigned to before. So
New Roads has a way of inundating the priests.
But he loves it, and it was just hard for him to come in every Sunday, an hour drive in, and we filmed at 7:00, so and then edit, all the things. So he won't say that it's canceled, but it's definitely on the back burner, on hiatus. So we
he keeps, he's got the podcast studio set up.
Yeah.
We keep talking about some kind of show.
He keeps talking about it. He's like, we can bring it back. And I'm like, can you? And he's like, no. Okay. Yeah. So it's been good. Yeah. It was really fun. It's just a fun, like, podcasting and radio stuff is something I never thought I would get into, but it's super fun. Like, 'cause it's just like interviewing you're interviewing all your friends. Like, just sit down and have a conversation. And now when we did the Catholic Underground, because it was for TV, there were a lot of times, and
you had to have like breaks.
Yeah, you'd have hard breaks, or there were things that Father Chris didn't really want to touch on or get, and so every once in a while when he'd like tick me off, right? I sat in the middle of him and Olivia Galino, and they would go back and forth about, when you're in Italy, and I'm like, no, I don't. I've never been to Italy, thank you. or he'd say something before the show that would just like, and we've known each other for a long time, and so we'd start the pot, like he'd press, okay, we're live, and I'd be like, give him this look, and he's looking at me like, no, and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'd be like, you know what? Let me say something. And he's over here on the side like, oh, my gosh. Or he's like giving me the look like, shut it down. And I'm like, and another thing, and just touching on all the things that he probably would not have rather, touched on. I'm like, what? Anything to put in, Father? No? Okay. So we had a good time. It was really, really fun. So
He's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We,
Oh, yeah.
you know, sometimes we make mistakes altar serving.
yeah, yeah,
And but you know, like, and I've made all the mistakes.
sure.
You know, and he sometimes cuts us down like with his
Yeah.
laser beams.
Yeah. He's good at that. Yeah,
But I mean, he's so sharp. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like
yeah.
I wish I was that fast on my
Yeah.
feet. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, we'd be talking about stuff, and I'd be like, and he'd be like, he'd answer it for me, and I'd be like, one time I forgot what he said, but he said something about like a whale or something, but like talking about me, and I was like, no, go on, and he was like, I mean, well, what, and I was like,
and you never see him tongue tied.
yeah, and this is like on the pot. I was like, no, continue, you know, and it's just little things like that because he's so sharp.
Oh, dude.
He always got my goat, like always. And when I got the opportunity to get his, it was like zinger, you know. So it was great. It was
You know,
fun.
you kind of think all your very sharp priests are like going to go to the Jesuits or
Yeah.
something like that, but we have some priests here
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
beyond. I mean, and that's part of the reason we're doing this show is like
Yeah.
we just have just amazing people in this
Yeah.
diocese, yourself included.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, and that's what I always loved about being at the radio station. Like the pledge drive is coming up, and I love it because everybody who is, you know, like not everybody who's anybody, but it's like it is the hub of, you know,
We have Sister Dulce
yeah,
here,
right?
You know?
and it's like, oh my gosh, hey, you haven't seen in forever because you're now at Parish Timbuktu,
Yeah.
you know, but we'll sit down for a few minutes before you go on air, you know, and that's what's really cool.
Well, let's get into Red Stick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rest
Catholic.
Catholics. Yeah. So, So I was teaching. So I finished at Women's New Life in December, and I was like, shoot, I don't have a job, and it's December. And
Merry Christmas to me.
yeah, Merry Christmas. I'm poor, and still, and there happened to be an opening at Mercy for 6th and 8th grade, and I was like, I very much dislike middle school. Sign me up, yes, please.
Was Carmel over there? at that
Carmel was
time?
over there. Yeah.
Roba never hit you up?
No, I'd already taught at St. Michael. Yeah.
Okay.
That was before I went to New Orleans. So I did St. Joseph, St. Michael, and then went to New Orleans
Okay.
to spread my wings, and then decided I'm coming back home.
Yeah, quick U-turn.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
miss me with New Orleans.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're
Nola
great.
people.
They're great, but
Nah.
I was not one of them.
Yeah.
So
Ditto.
so I came home. Yep, and then so I started teaching in January, and then COVID hit. And
Fun times.
it was an adventurous. I think I was there for 2 years, 2.5, including that first stint. And when I left New Orleans, the Lord was like, "You don't need to teach anymore." And I was like, "Well, Lord, thank you very much. I have 2 degrees in theology, and what else shall I do? I got a
It's
master's."
always gold prospect.
Yeah, like, right? I was like, I got a master's basically because I knew if I didn't, like, I couldn't push as far as I could, like, financially. And I was like, I know I'm not going to get a PhD. I'm not going to teach on I'm not going to be a Brant Petrie. I'm just not. Like, it's not the way my brain works. So let me just help myself, you know. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he answered the way he always does. Just, I don't know. I was like, come on, man. And so a position opened as coordinator at the diocese under Wes Giffen as a director. And I was like, okay, yes. Because when I was in high school, there was in that position a beautiful woman. Her name was Peggy LeBlanc. And Miss Peggy was everybody's grandma. And she was, at the time, the director who was in that position was Cooper. And she was
Cooper Ray.
Yeah, Cooper Ray, his grandma. You know, like he was the rock star, and he'll die if he hears this, but like he was the rock star director of youth ministry, and she was the one making sure everybody turned in their paperwork, you know, that Cooper had done all he had, you know, like, and I was like, that's who I want to be, the woman who takes care of everybody. Mm-hmm. That's where I am. Like, I'm just like, I don't need to be in front of anybody. I'd done speaking. I played music before, and I was like, I'm tired, and I want to, like,
a checklist.
What's that song that I keep thinking Eagles Learn to Be Still, but what was
Is it Mother's song?
No. Well, I'll have to come back to that.
Yeah.
But that song you wrote and sang, was awesome.
Oh,
If you,
yeah.
we'll get it
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the show
Yeah.
notes or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah, you should at least sell the
Yeah, thank
song,
you.
or
Yeah.
if you're not gonna.
I wrote a couple of songs and they like came out like that, and then it got hard, and I was like, no thanks. I was like, I think it's probably because it's where I was in my prayer life, but the Lord was like, you need to not try to express it, you just need to do it. So
Sorry to distract.
No,
but
no, that's
that
good.
just needed.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I did that, and so I started in June of 2022. And I really the way that Wes had kind of cultivated the office at this point was pouring into our ministers. Like I said, we're not doing big events, and I'd done that. I worked on the last 2 Abbey Fests, like on the production team, and like loved that. Had some like, I don't know how you would explain it, like some ministerial hurts, with like ministries that I was involved in that was doing stuff like that. So I was like, I need a break. Maybe I'm chasing that for the wrong reason, to be in front of people and to be like a speaker and whatever. And the Lord was really like, yeah, you just need to be quiet. Like, just go be the background. And I was like, okay. And that was really, I felt really good about it. And then that, I think September, October, Wes was like, yeah, I'm out. And I told him, you should be the next director. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So I really discerned, like, because Adam and I had been married for about a year. We had talked about staying home, if I had gotten pregnant, and like I'd never thought about that before.
Yeah. So how does this sync up with the pregnancy? This is
Yes,
a
this
couple
is about
years
this is about a
before?
year before.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And so I really discerned. I was like, I don't know. And then I applied and was like, okay, yeah. And it's been great. So now it's, Red Stick Catholics is the name of our young adult group.
Red Stick because
Red Stick because of Baton Rouge. Rouge meaning red stick.
for all our international
Yeah.
listeners,
For all yeah.
who can probably speak French anyway.
Yeah. And they're probably like, yes, we're culturally
Yeah, we're
educated. We know these things. But yeah, it's, young adult ministry is, it's just really interesting because it's not real defined. Like the first time I was actually the coordinator of young adult ministry in like 2013. It was like a part-time position that they hired me for at the diocese. They were just like, maybe we should do something with this. And every little community within the young adult community was like, this is what young adult ministry is. It's really 20 to 25. And I'm like, no, I'm missing like 15 years of, it's really for young married people. Okay. But it's really for young professionals. That's really the young adult. And I was like, huh. So when you look at young adult ministry, you're looking at 18 to 40, whatever, because you've got the sweet hanger-oners who, that's the ministry that they found. It's a home that they found in the church. And so within that, all of the different stages of life, you've got college students, you've got young professionals, single people, married people, divorced people, people who've lost spouses, people who have children.
You can have one program that's good.
Yeah. It's called the Catholic Church in general, it's called parish life.
Sacraments.
And so it's been really hard to kind of invite people into that without defining what it is, while at the same time encouraging parish involvement and parish, that's where where your home should be. And then my next step is to get in front of our pastors and say, what place have you made for young adults? Because I think right now what we do is, because in our diocese and in many dioceses, confirmation is where it is at junior year. We confirm our kids and then we go, okay.
Yeah. Ta-ta.
See, and then they hang around for their senior year and we go, yeah, you graduated. Okay, bye.
I hope you hold on to this.
Yeah, we hope you find a college campus ministry. And then we ask the question, where are our young adults? Well, where did you send them? Like, what place have you made for them? What continuity has been in their parish life? Mm-hmm. We can't release them into the wild with no community, or their community being a high school youth group that they're not legally they can't come back and hang out with, you know. So then they go on to college ministry, and there's several who hang on to that ministry for a long time, well past when they graduated, you know. And that's it's good because it's good ministry, but it's also like, this is okay, you know, like, where is the next step for you? And so, it's really difficult trying to minister to all the needs without feeling like you failed at some point, at many points, you know. Because the minute somebody emails me and say, why don't you do this, I'm like, I suck. Like, I suck as a minister, you know. But it's like, okay, what are we capable of, and what is, like,
huge gap here.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm hoping with the change of confirmation, that it forces this continuity in parish life. And you don't have to stay at the same parish as you grew up at, but that you are so involved in a parish that you're not hopping from a high school ministry to a college ministry,
the transition,
then to a diocesan, you know, young adult ministry, which is just a continuation of a catered ministry. It's just, how can I be a member of the church universal, you know, in a real way that not only I receive, but that I give back as well. Because that's a missing, like, we're not missing seniors in high school to whenever they get married or have babies and want to come back and get involved in the church. We're not missing them because of the biggest problem is not where are the numbers. The biggest problem is where are the gifts and talents of those people, you know, and what the experience that they have of Christ that they bring into a parish, you know, or a community at large.
Yeah, I think charism's obviously a huge thing, but like young
enthusiasm,
kids, finding your charism could be finding your passion
right
on the front end, not like finding what you're good at and then how can I implement that in the church. You can, if you can figure that out earlier.
I remember when we were helping out with youth group and stuff, it almost felt like that wasn't only the only thing going on in town. It was the only thing going on at church. You know, it's like you just had blinders on.
Well, it's like, you know, in a lot of places, what started off, you have to remember that, like, youth ministers and youth group is a relatively new thing in the church. Like, it's like early 2000s, late 1990s. And so I think from then on, we just started to really silo groups in the church, like, and a ministry that could, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Accentuate what I'm getting through the sacraments and parish life. Like, okay, a men's group or this group, then became like, this is my church. You know, youth group is my church. Steubenville experience is my church. And it's like, okay, but do you experience Jesus in the everyday Eucharist? Like at your parish mass that you might get bored at, you know, like it doesn't have a light show and, you know, 10,000 other people there. You know, are we teaching our young people to experience Christ in that way? You know, and not say, okay, this is what my church is. No, this is the church. And everything else is a way to accentuate the faith that you grow here, you know, and that's based in the Eucharist. We have ministries out there that, like, you know, I'm like, y'all ever say that word? Y'all ever say the E word, Eucharist? Y'all say that? No? Okay, cool. You know, like some Catholic ministries are out there that look very Protestant, you know, and that's a danger because, you know, we've taken what we should base our faith life on and completely shifted it to, it's based on this event or this activity or this community rather than, you know, parish life.
There's such a richness to, like, the rhythms of parish life and the rhythm of the liturgical year. And I mean, if it's just like, if your liturgical year is, well, Steubenville's in October. Right. And we got Christmas and Easter too. You know.
So, I think young adults are an untapped, like,
sleeping giants.
Yeah. And if we can get it back in a parish, man. But it's a both and. Like, they had to commit, and the parish has to
make room.
Like, and you might want to edit this out. I don't know, because I don't know who to offend. But, like, Like I call them the gargoyles of the church. Those people who have been doing their ministry for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And in an attempt to protect it in a good sense, have like
Suppressed.
yeah, and no, like can I come be no, okay, like can I what no?
That's
you know?
what Father John Ricardo with
Yeah.
Acts 29. He
Yeah,
finds that battle axe.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
hampering growth.
yeah. Like you look at you look at some of those older ministries, and they're dying.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful ministry, beautiful parts of the church that
I'm been Grand Knights of our council for I don't know, it feels like 30 years now.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, there you go.
yeah,
I mean, like the Knights, not to rag on the Knights, they're doing a lot of things at the high level, but there needs to be some growth there.
yeah, yeah. And with that comes change. You have to be. Young adults are a different generation, obviously, than my parents and older, and so there has to be a give and a take. There has to be a respect for the ways that things are done. I can't come in as a young adult and just assume that this way sucks. We're gonna do it my way because it's the newer way. That's not always the case.
That's
the church's been
modernism.
around for a long time, and you can't just come in and say, welcome to the new age, like this is it.
Yeah, I think that's what's beautiful about Acts Retreat too,
Yeah.
is there are no egos because it's so new,
Yeah,
and it is like a congregating community, parish building thing.
yeah,
And how can you take that model and bringing men, and that's maybe a little bit over a young adult,
yeah,
but
And even Acts, right? It
Yeah.
has to be dovetailed into parish
Right.
life because it's sometimes it's not a
Right.
natural
yeah,
right,
conduit.
right,
They just kind of exist to do more acts.
right, yeah,
And so that's one of the challenges.
Yeah.
You have these great movements of the spirit,
right.
but again, how do we get them
Right.
to tie back into parish
Right.
life?
Well, you're gonna have that with any mission, mission-driven ministry run by human beings,
yeah,
right? It's not always the desire, but sometimes that happens, and it's like, okay, how do we redirect? How do we stop and look at what we're doing and why we're doing it? Yeah. So Resident Catholics are about to go to Italy in November, which I'm stoked about with Father Taylor Sanford.
Oh, that'd be
Let's go.
It's gonna be so fun. So
My
we're going.
guy.
There's 11 of us. We're going for the Jubilee year, and for 11 days. It's
What's
Maybe.
the date again?
November 3rd through the 13th.
And
Yeah,
the Shroud of
All
Turin
right,
might be on
straddling
display
my
too.
birthday.
I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
and the Kennedy assassination.
Except I'll have a
Happy
I'll have a-
anniversary.
I have a 1 month old at
Yeah.
that point and a 1 year old.
Perfect time to get. Yeah, that's so we
Yeah.
just went on a mission trip. We took the whole
Yeah,
all of them, all the baby, all the way
He's
down.
a seasoned veteran.
yeah.
Though.
Well, Cece will be like a year and a half, and somebody was like, "You bring Cece?" And I was like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah. No.
No, because
No?
I'm not bringing Adam, and so I was like, "We all have to go." Or just
Oh
one of
yeah,
us goes.
it's a squad thing.
Yeah, yeah.
We talked to Emily about that with
Yeah.
the march.
When people come to me and they're like, "We need to start this specific young adult ministry," I'm like, "Good, you're in charge," and we'll do all the general things. So, I have a big initiative. It's like I don't know if it's coming out of the office because I'm gonna do it, but my goal is in the fall to get in front of our priests and talk about, okay, now with this confirmation change, let's take a real hard look at who our young people are. How do we minister to them, and let's take a look at the role of youth minister, because a lot of parishes, not only in our own diocese but across the I was going to say the United States, but probably across the world, when a youth minister leaves a position, oftentimes those roles are just kind of absorbed by other people, and then it's like, oh well, so and so can do it, and that's why we have slashers, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, oh, I've had priests tell me, I don't have a youth minister because our DRE, our director of religious education, can do that, and I'm like, no. Sitting in a classroom and sitting and eating pizza are two very different things.
Different skill
And
sets.
that we've had one priest that's like, I've heard of a priest say, I'm not gonna pay a full-time position to sit and eat pizza with my with young people. And I'm like, dude, that's how I got involved in the church.
Yeah.
Because I went over to the youth house and ate way too much pizza.
Yeah.
Type 2 diabetic. That's why
As simple as that.
I blame the youth house, right? But that's discipleship, And so I think a lot of our priests, especially ones that aren't tuned in to youth, to ministry to young people, make choices like that out of triage, right? When you get into a parish, it's like, okay, I don't have the money for this, so I'm just going to, oh, look, they're doing it. It's fine. But I want to be able to look and send out a survey to our high school kids, like, tell me everything about your faith, the things, blah, blah. So I can give a profile of our young people in the diocese to our priests and say, this is what they need and want and desire. This is what it looks like to minister to young people. This is everybody who's involved, from their parents to the little old lady who prays the rosary in the back of church, and everybody, spoiler alert, everybody in the parish is a minister to young people. Everybody. And then let's take a real hard look at the role of youth minister, and I haven't even gotten to young adult ministry yet, right? Because somebody asked me, they're from Dallas, I think, and they were like, how many of your parishes have a young adult minister? And I was like, I have 10 that have a youth minister out of 64. Like, I don't have any who have a young adult minister. And he was like, oh, we have one in every parish. It was Texas. Yeah. And so then the role of youth minister and how, we call them different things. We pay them different things. There's no clear, I was shocked when I met my husband, and he was he could tell me what an engineer with this much experience could make across the board. We don't do that. We don't. And there's this sense of there's this sense of martyrdom that has to happen, right? So if I'm gonna go to the church, if I'm gonna work for the church, of course, there are things that I'm gonna have to give up, right? But sometimes there's martyrdom that does not need to be there, right? And so why do we lose so many good youth ministers? Because they have to go sell insurance so they can feed their families.
Yeah.
And it's okay, and maybe we're in a parish that can't. I was at a deanery meeting, and I was with the whole spectrum, from priests at parishes that had 2 people on staff to priests at a parish that, was obviously making a lot of money, or maybe not making a lot of money, but they could support their people very well. And I asked them, I said, how are you investing in your young people? And I saw this, this one from the poorer parish be like, well, and I was like, I don't mean financially. That might be part of it. Yeah. How are you investing in your young people? Do you show up to their youth group? I'm not saying you got to go there every time. I know you guys have more things to do than, do you poke your head in for 5 minutes and say, hey, what are y'all doing? Okay, cool, blah, 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 bye. Are you, looking at hiring a full-time, part-time, whatever? What budget do you have for youth ministry? And is it that way because out of necessity or out of just, well, this is where we are now? If you're going to ask me where your young people are, I'm going to ask you, where are they? Do you know where they are?
Yeah.
Because
and not you.
Yeah, because if you're not investing in them in some sort of way or fashion. And so I don't think the majority of our priests do that out of any malicious, intent. It's just not out of a million, pots on fire. That's one where they're like, we have a school, and they go to school and they get, okay, So I want to be able to say, this is what it looks like. Ministry to young people. How can I help you? How can I help you bridge the gap in your parish specifically, from any gap from baptism to when they die? And maybe that's handing them off to other parishes, fine, but how are we acting on those buzzwords? Accompaniment, discipleship,
I think I got a solution for you. We'll talk later.
All right.
I think, but yeah, so.
Yeah.
Did we figure out the question that we were supposed to ask Kathleen?
No, let me ask Kaylee if she texts us her.
Yeah.
Something about joy. I think we got that part.
I would expect nothing less from her. Yeah.
From a Mercedarian. Maybe
Let's
some
see.
mercy.
Yeah.
There's something about joy and
And the Eucharist, maybe.
no, it was.
Well, to put you on the spot. So what question would you ask of the next guest?
I think I asked my sixth graders this one time, and it was so fun to get their answers because they're like hot messes in a little ball of energy. Is what when you die, if the church were to canonize you, what would you be the patron saint of, and what would your holy card look like? Like if we were passing out holy cards, like, so, I always talk about like, like if you see a saint, okay, Saint Joseph, right? I know it doesn't have to say Saint Joseph at the bottom, but I see the lilies and I can say, and some of the stuff they come up with is just like,
what's some of the stuff?
I mean, like, so, of course, a lot of it is sports equipment, right? I'm going to football. I'm like, okay, yeah. And I'm being a Heisman. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. But a lot, some of it is like whatever, like toy of the day is, like for me, it would have been like Furbies, right? Like me and a Furby. And I'm like, what does that have to do with your spirituality? And but the stuff they come up with, they're like, I'm like a Furby because, like you have to like, you like
big white eyes.
Yeah. Sometimes I just go and I go and I go and then I crash. And I'm like, okay. And then when you least expect it, I'm up again. And I'm like, okay, what? Okay. So yeah. So like, what do you think you would be the patron saint of? And what would be your distinctive holy card?
Awesome.
Image. Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Might be better than Sister Heart of Jesus. I don't know. That'll just be the maybe we'll just ask that of everybody from then on to make up for it.
Yeah. So what did we think it was? It was like, what?
Is it greatest joy or? I wasn't here.
What brings you greatest joy?
I would literally be guessing.
Yeah.
Remember that spark joy, that lady that would go into the
houses? Marie
That's
Kondo. Yeah.
It was something
If
about.
it doesn't bring you joy, let it go. I'm like, but all these, I tried that, right? Like I'm going through all my stuff and like, cause my husband is like, you are a hoarder. I'm not a hoarder, but like,
That's what they all say.
Well, like compared to him, who's like a, like a minimalist,
Just
no
need two
art on his
shirts.
walls. Yeah. Clothes that are like probably as old as he is.
I still have my middle
That's
school
me.
quiz bowl shirt.
Yeah. That's him.
That's how.
And he's, but I tried that one day and I was like, I like this. Okay. You can stay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This one though, you can, okay. Yeah. You can stay too. Yeah.
Well, maybe just answer your own question.
Yeah. I think that if I were the patron saint of something, yeah.
Probably a red stick on the
Yeah.
holy
Yeah.
card.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There'd definitely be, maybe a Norman Fauché,
Yeah, lots of little
Here he
details.
comes.
all those little
again.
ones. Yeah. All those little ones where you go, oh, I didn't see that. I've looked at this picture a million times.
Normans, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that about it.
Yeah. I think I
I mean, Our Lady of Walsingham's got to be in there some kind.
oh yeah. Yeah. She'll be in there.
She's peeking out over your shoulder.
Yeah. There's a beautiful, like, if you look at her, there's like a carving of her that now hangs in Cecilia's room.
Oh, nice.
And she's like on a throne. She's pretty legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I might be the patron saint of like almost like Peter Junior's, right? Because like I always love Peter because he's so there and so not there. Like, like he's always like the one who's like, I got it. And Jesus is like, no, you don't. You're an idiot. Go. So like people.
And youth ministers.
Yeah,
That'd be a
maybe.
good one.
Like, I think people who, and this might be like very specific, like people who are like very boisterous, who need to be told to sit down and be quiet. Like, go talk to St. Kathleen. Like, if you're like if you're kind of hurt, if your feelings are hurt because Jesus told you go sit in the corner and be quiet, like go talk to St. Cal. Happened all the time. Like he was constantly being like, yeah,
Saint of reason.
yeah.
And
He was constantly being like, no. And thankfully now, like I'll start to say something or start to do something, and I'm like, and he's like, no. I'm like, okay, thank you. Whereas before, there have been many times where he's been chasing after me, going, Kathleen, why didn't you like check in with me first? Or I'll come back to him like, that was bad, and he's like, I know, that ended badly. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it would just be like a picture of me sitting in a corner, like with my back to everybody, just like in the timeout chair.
That's like a super depressing.
Who is your confirmation saint?
My confirmation saint was Saint Bernadette. Yeah. My grandmother went to. My mom's mom went to Lourdes, and I don't know what her experience was because I was very young, but she had a big enough experience to come back, and she was like, let's have a girls' night. And I was like, heck yeah. She's like, well, we'll rent a movie. And I was like, woo. And she rented Song of Bernadette. It was like an old black and white movie. I was like, boring. And then I was watching it, and it's the same as Padre Pio. Like, I call them stalker saints. Like, these are saints that show up in my life that I have no idea. Like, me and Bernadette are very different. Like, she was this poor, frail, like, I'm just going to go collect sticks. And then
Into that movie when she's like, I have a slight hurt in my leg.
Yeah.
And that mean nun, Mother Spirit, is looking at her, and she pulls her so you can see, and they're like,
yeah. I would have been like, I just stubbed my toe. And they're like, okay, you're not dying. And I'm like, no, I really am. Like very different. But I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't know what my grandmother's experience was, but I recognized it enough so that it was very powerful. And so Bernadette at the time represented that to me, like some kind, and I couldn't name it at the time, like some kind of spiritual conversion, came from this little girl. And then her story of her being like, Bishop, and the bishop being like, you're an idiot. And she being like, Bishop, and her being faithful to this woman who she didn't even know was Our Lady, and then, that this woman was just like, Jesus. And she was like, okay, Jesus says, okay, and then, so I picked her in honor of my grandmother, and then to have Our Lady have such a presence in my life from then on, it's really like stalkers. I still don't know. I have your image of a print that my husband gave me of Padre Pio in my office. And literally I ask him every day, I say, what do you want? And he just looks
Padre
at me.
Pio, your husband.
Padre Pio. Oh, yeah. Yeah, both. I'm like, what do you want from me? No. Padre Pio, I'm like, what do you want? And he's just like, that's it. Nothing, not a word. Like, I started reading about him, and I was like, yep, I am not that holy. I do not, I don't suffer in silence. I don't, most times I don't smell like roses. I smell, I try to put deodorant on, but, like we're very, very different. And one day, and it might be when I meet the Lord, but like one day he's going to be like, this is why. And I'll be like, okay. But I collect them, my stalker saints. And sometimes it's very evident, why they're there. Yeah. She won't stalk
in a good
me.
way. Yeah.
Padre Pio.
I've asked her to, and she's like, no.
Padre Pio and me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He probably adopted you.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Which I'm afraid because when Padre Pio tells me why, I'm gonna be like, oh no.
Yeah. When I asked,
is
when
intense,
he answered me swiftly.
Yeah. He doesn't. He just sits in your print and goes.
I was
shrugs his
just
It's
telling
like
him,
I'm a
like,
rock
okay.
in Jacob's
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Let me
He's like,
get
I'm
out-
too busy.
Let me get out
I'll
of
get
here.
to you in a minute. And I'm like, okay. Yeah.
I was just telling somebody today about a near-death experience. Padre Pio was involved in a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And this one was Father Jean Darobert, French priest, gunned down, because he's in the French-Algerian Civil War. Heavy weapons fire, and has this near-death experience. And Padre Pio, because he doesn't say much at all,
Yeah.
afterwards when they're done with that, and he was done protecting him from the hellfires during the year, he's like, wow, you really took me for a ride that time, didn't you? That's all he
Yeah.
said.
Lion
That's all he
Friar.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to that one, but So I have a couple that they just show up. You know, like when you're in tune to it, they just show up, and they show up more and more and more until you're like, okay, what do you want? And then you spend time with them, right, in prayer, and like, okay, and then part of your life lines up with their story, or you know, through their intercession. You know, for us, or for me, it was for a couple of years St. Gerard, right? Praying to start a family. And now I pray for other women, you know, through his intercession. And he's just been I didn't know what, like, I encountered him way before I was trying to get, like, even thinking about, I wasn't married, you know. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, you know, it turns out. Yeah. Our Lady does that a lot in my life with her titles, you know. She's like, I see you. I'm like, okay. You know, Our Lady of Guadalupe, when I did mission work in Mexico. Yeah. Our Lady of Lourdes. I've never been to Lourdes. It's on my list. But Our Lady of Walsingham, of course. Our Lady of Cabejo. Our Lady of Guadalupe came back when we were trying to have a baby. Yeah, so Our Lady Star of the Sea. I'm not a boater, but at one point she was like, hey, and I was like, okay, you know. So,
Stella Marie.
Yeah.
That's my aunt's sister name, the
Yeah.
MC.
Yeah.
Stella Marie.
Yeah, I saw that
Sister
she
Drita Marie. Sorry.
Yeah,
Like,
I
it's
saw
the
that she
same
came to
thing.
visit. I was like, I didn't know. I've never met her.
A
but
lot
I
of
was
people
like,
ran into her too.
Yeah.
Emily ran into her on her. It was her birthday. They went for adoration, and we like just released my aunt like 3 hours late from visiting us.
Yeah.
And Emily crossed paths with her. Someone at Sacred Heart today told me they crossed paths with her.
Wow.
Like, nice. Take her out of hiding.
Yeah.
She might have been bilocating.
I'll
try.
Hey, she's got a whole series. Hopefully we'll work on soon.
Yeah.
But awesome, y'all.
Cool.
Well, I mean, I still got the whole list that
I
we
know.
didn't get to, which is awesome though.
Yeah.
But you should really start like season 2 and like bring, because I know it's like with everybody, you know, there's so much more that you could.
But I'm
fit in.
glad that
tease
it
like
didn't.
Return
Yeah.
of the Digital Underground.
Yeah.
And
And then you kind of test. You kind of test to see like who gets good ratings.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I love Bishop Dukas. You're like, oh, good, we got a second one of that.
Right.
So like that Kathleen girl, you don't need to have her back on. Well, we don't.
No.
We don't. Not. We finished with her.
You almost tapped 3 hours. Oh no, 3 hours and 3 minutes. Let's go. That's our longest.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 3. Okay, yeah.
So
I can't
good.
read.
Man.
Old man eyes.
Man, great. Well,
Yeah.
you want to close us in prayer?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we ask that you send us your saints, those that we know and those that we do not. Teach us how to be examples and witnesses to the encounters that we've had with you. To be bold, to be courageous, to be silent when we need to be gentle, to be humble. And we ask in a very real way that Our Lady, under all of her titles, be with us in our lives in special ways when we need her the most, so that she may be a mantle that we fly unto and a mirror that reflects only love for you. So we encounter Christ through her, so that others may encounter Christ through us. We ask all of our saints, all of our patron saints, to pray for us, and for all of those stalker saints who have us in their sights, to lift our intentions and to lift our lives to you, Lord, as we do the same. We ask this all in your holy name. Amen. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Our Lady of
Walsingham.
Walsingham.
Our Lady of
pray for
Walsingham,
us.
pray for us.
All our stalker saints.
And
All
all the
our
stalkers.
All our men and women stalker saints. Yeah.